I'm not nervous, I'm not scared. For the first time I'm aware, my eyes are open, I have awoken, now I follow you. Now I fall into my knees, but as I kneel I feel the breeze. And I will waste no time in saying you've made me realize that all this time I've been drifting.
What's going on, people? Welcome to 137 Works, and today I am here with my good buddy, Irish Amateur Drift. That's the league you're in, Irish Amateur Drift?
It's the Irish Drift Championship, but it's the Pro-Am class.
Oh, so you're in the Pro, yeah, so you're like...
Pro-Am.
Right, so, yep, as you heard, Pro-Am class of the Irish Drift Championship, and he's actually done really well. He's just won an event, in fact, the most recent event in Dunleary. You won that one?
Yep, correct, yep, Dunleary.
That's very cool. So, yeah, so basically this was a thing that I did back in, like, the olden days of just interviewing people and chatting to shit and stuff like that. And, yeah, just it occurred to me that I've got some good friends that are, like, actually drifting in real life. The channel is based around drifting for the most part nowadays. Why not, like, get on with them and kind of pick their brains a little bit? So I've got a couple of people lined up. Some friends, some not so much friends, but also very much interesting. But I won't go into that just yet because, you know, obviously surprise and tease and stuff like that. But yeah, basically, so Alan is somebody that I met back on the Xbox 360, which is strange enough. Like, you shouldn't talk to people on the internet, I know, but I was taught that growing up. But apparently, you know, you get on Xbox Live and things happen. But yeah, no. So we were talking about this. You were 13, between 13 and 14, maybe 15 maximum when we first met back in Forza 3. Back in like 2009, 2010.
Yeah, it was something like that. I mean, like, as you said there, you know, you're not supposed to be talking to the people on the internet. It was very much so the same with myself, like, you know, parents, very protective. And especially like at 13 or 14, you know, when you're talking to people who live approximately 2 hours away and you don't know what age they are, you know, you're not really sure exactly what's going to happen there. But yeah, I started... I think we met. It was on Forza 3 or something like that. I think it was around the start of it.
Well, I was Forza 3. I had had a PlayStation since PS3 since 2007, and I think I went through 4 of them, like returning them all. They all broke, and then by the time the 4th one broke, it was about November time, and I started seeing the ads for Forza 3 on the TV. Forza Motorsport 3 for younger people that are playing Forza Horizon 3 at the moment. Forza Motorsport 3 back in, I think it was 2009, and I was like, holy crap, that looks amazing. So I asked my parents for an Xbox. My sister got me the wheel, the Microsoft 360 wheel thing, and and my other sister got me the game, like, and I was like totally stoked. Like, basically that was a console seller for me, that game. So that's where I started, but you were already in it by that stage. And I think we were saying just before we started, I think you were 14 when we met.
Yeah, I think it was like something like that, because I remember I got into it the last year of Forza 2. So it was like, I got my Xbox. Okay, so I was on YouTube. I was on very rarely on YouTube, because around then, like, YouTube was like,
it was only like a couple of years old.
Yeah, it was not even that. I'd say it was even younger than that, and I didn't even know what YouTube was. But I just remember watching a drifting video, and I was on the like X999 level on Forza 2, just drifting around to Scuba, and I was like, that's sick. And like over here, as you probably know, like, you have the confirmation and your communions and you have all of these like things and stuff you have in school.
Basically, so, excuses to get money.
Yeah, exactly. And like back then it was in the real good times, so like there was a lot of money going around, or should we say money in like bank money or whatever it was. So like a lot of friends and family like had, you know, they just gave me money, so I made a lot of money out of that. You know, I think, I got my first drift car out of that. I got my first Xbox. Like, there was a nice bit of money there. But yeah. So I got Xbox. I got my Forza 2, and I was just played it, and I played it for about 6 months before Forza 3 came out. So I was already on the game for a while. I had my steering wheel as well, also Microsoft, the 270-degree wheel. Yeah. And I was just playing that for about a year or whatever, and then got into Forza 3, and then this Dublin guy came in, and I can't really remember much more, because was it for Forza 3 they removed the private lobbies or something like that, or did they remove the public lobbies?
I think so. Yeah. Forza 3 is the.
So I can't exactly remember how we met, but we met some true friends, or something like that.
I was going to say that's actually my next question. Is we are mutual friends with Deco Byrne. Who is also a lot of people, if you're following the Irish Drift Championship, you might have seen Deco as well. He's like making big moves. He's got a really cool aggressive driving style and is kind of fairly underpowered S14. But yeah, he was a mutual friend back then, and I don't know if it was true Deco or if it was true like one of the other lads at the time that I met you and Deco. But for some reason, me and you and Deco, like yous are basically two of the only people for the most part that I talk to still from those days. Like, because one thing that I remember specifically one time where we were on Sunset Club. And yous were just knocking out backwards entries in Forza 3, like knocking them out, and I just couldn't get it. Every time I got to the first corner, I throw it in. I wasn't even trying to get particularly backwards. I was just trying to drift like at this stage. I was throwing it in, and then I just couldn't catch it. And yous were telling me to watch your telemetries, watch your replays, and all that and stuff like that. And I just couldn't get it. But like that's the memory that I have from back then. So it was definitely used to. And I know there's a couple of other lads. There was like a guy called Dylan, I think, as well.
Dylan, I can't remember. I know there was another guy, all right, but. I mean, there was no one. Oh yeah, that was Mark. Yeah, he's still about. I haven't talked to him in years. Actually.
Yeah, there was a good few lads, but definitely
there was a few good Irish guys. Yeah, there was a good few Irish guys back then. Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Like, it was great, good fun.
It was good times. But yeah, so that transferred then like into real life, and we'll get onto that a little bit later. I've met Dec. I think did I meet you that day as well? Me and Tom.
No, you think you met Declan at a little practice day in Hull or the Tannery Drift or something like that, someplace in Carlow, I believe, maybe. Or did you edit some footage from Declan? I'm not sure exactly, but I don't think we've met before. Which is still kind of weird.
I was going to say, yeah, no, because I feel like I thought I must have walked up to you, like even one of the.
Oh yes, no, we did actually. It was at Global Warfare when Matt Powers first came over. I'm pretty sure we met.
I think you were you were not judging. What's the other one with the flags? And
I was doing speedgun and a bit of track marshalling and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
I think I just walked up and said hello. But yeah, like you, so me and you have like briefly met once, and I met Deco when he was, I think it was the Sunday, and he'd competed on the Saturday. And his car was still there, and Maeve was still there. And me and Tom, you know Tom?
Briefly, I think so, yeah.
We were there, we were just hanging out with Deco for the day there. But yeah, that's just a brief introduction then for the people that are watching, how we know each other, how we met, and that kind of thing. So there's some kind of specific questions to you then that I had come up with. So how'd you get into cars? I know you're from Cork, is it? Well, I know you're from Cork, is it? And obviously true, the car scene down there in the south of Ireland in particular is just huge. Like, so I'm presuming it's always been there for you. Like.
No, I don't know really. Like, I wasn't exactly. See, when I was born, my dad was already into cars. Like, my dad was competitively karting in the 90s, and even before I was born, he was mad into his Alphas. He had like in the 80s, he had a load of Alpha Sprints, Sud Sprints and stuff like that. So he had lots of those cars, and even in his younger years, again, he had these old Hillman Avengers and Hillman Imps and everything like that. And his brother, my uncle, should I say, is actually used to co-drive for a famous rally driver from Wales.
Yeah.
And I think in a way that's how my dad got into it. But then for me, when I was born, I don't even think, regardless of what my dad had influence on me or whatever English terminology for that, I think I was into cars regardless. I think that was it. Because I was born, I had just grasped to it very quickly. I was even hooked my dad's van's tires, and I'd come back in for my little roller toy car thingy that I used to sit on and be covered in rubber or like dust and stuff from the brakes and everything. So I think I just got into it just by having the love for it. I don't think I was pushed into it, or I wasn't really exactly saw a car like, oh, that's what I wanted to do.
Were you one of those kids that had like that like was like 6 and yet like still riding the car around in the field or something like that, like beside your house or whatever?
No, nothing like that. I mean, my dad, he had his go-karts. He was karting all the time. Not karting all the time, like, but he was karting, and then eventually he sold it and bought a nice Lotus Clat, which is an old car. Old Lotus stuff, but we just lived in a house in the countryside. We I suppose in a way you're considered a culture. We were not really farmers, what I mean. My parents kind of lived inside the city, not in the city, but in towns, and I think they got sick of the town life and they decided to move out to the country when they started their family. I think I was just one of those kids that just moved out that was in the countryside, and that's about it. Just enjoy playing with my little Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars.
Not much else to do out there.
Yeah, exactly. I just didn't really do much. Just like to be honest, I was in a way, I was kind of a lonely kid, but more so because of the fact that I like playing. I like being alone. A bit of a lone wolf that way.
Yeah, it would be saying stuff.
Yeah, and playing games and stuff like. My dad got me my first PlayStation and stuff like that. So. yeah, that's how I kind of really got into it.
I see. How did you then? So then, obviously, you had an interest in cars from obviously a young age, I suppose you call it. How did you get into then drifting specifically? Like what? Like was it that Forza 2 thing or?
No, because I got into Forza 2 around, I think 2008, because that was the time. I think it was in sixth. So like in sixth year, I had my confirmation, or no, whatever the last holy thing in church you do in primary school before. Yeah, in sixth year before you go into secondary school. Sixth class. Sixth class. Sixth class. Yeah, that was approximately 5 years ago. I can't remember. No, it was, so I think drifting started for me in 2002.
Oh really?
Yeah, so I was like 6 or 7 when I first saw it.
Yeah.
Back then, it was very, very young sport, you know. How I first got into it was, so my dad was karting in the 90s, and then he kind of sold up at the end of the 90s. Yeah,
in the 90s.
Yeah, karting. Sounds like some sort of meme or something like, you know, shoot.
Initial D.
Yeah, that's it.
Running in the 90s.
Yeah, running in the 90s.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so yeah, that's funny. But yeah, so he kind of sold up in the 90s, and then he at the time, so in the town that we live, we have Darren McNamara, who's a famous ex-Formula D driver, and his brother. Yep, that's it, Darren McNamara. And then you have his brother Graham. Now, earlier in 2000, Graham started bringing in the Believe option DVDs. So you might have seen the D1 GP videos and stuff you see on YouTube and stuff. And I think he was kind of bringing those in. He kind of saw them online. I think he brought them in, and they watched.
Is he like a family friend or?
Well, he would be. I mean, like he's dad. So Graham and Darren's dad would know my dad quite well through the motorsport, because like the town is very small. So anyone that's into cars, you would know him. You know, you would know those people. And as well as that, I think
damn McNamara's making all the noise up on the hill.
Yeah, that's it. And so we just decided. My uncle, my dad's brother, who was the co-driver, who at the time wasn't co-driving anymore. I think he's the driver he used to co-drive for, retired.
Yeah.
And my other uncle, who had like lots of MGs and stuff over the years, we decided to go to one of the events that Graham was organising. That was in Rose Green, which, if you're into Irish drifting for a long time, you know about Rose Green. It was like the birth of drifting in Ireland.
Yeah.
And we just went there and we were just watching it. And it was just standard Skylines, A86s, pretty much anything you could think of. Ford Sierras, Opel Amigas, Opel Amiga, Senators, whatever they're called. And we were just there, and my dad just thought it was silly, you know. Like, if for those that don't know, my dad's actually the head judge of IDC, so you know it's kind of a bit of a change since then that he's kind of taken. But back then he thought it was silly, and you know he had seen enough, and that was it. He was going. It was really the only type of motorsport I've ever seen. You know, I was never. We went to rallies and stuff, but I mean, you stand at a corner, you only see a car pass, and then you wait another 30 seconds. Whereas this time I got to see like twice the amount of action or 3 times the amount of action in the same length of time that I'd be waiting. And that alone I was just attracted to, you know. And
drifting is one of those things where it's like there's nothing that's like it the first time you see it. And it's always good, like every time you go to see it, it's always good. But that first time you see it, like especially from my experience, like real quick, was that it was the Driftworks Chaser, I believe, that old GX or whatever it was. Chaser
X81, yeah.
The 81, yeah, that's that thing. I don't think I'd ever heard the JZ engine before. So to hear that thing hitting the limiter in Mondello coming around the last corner, it was just unreal. There was nothing like it. Like.
Yeah, it was awesome. I remember that car as well, actually. They ended up having an awful death of just being crushed, unfortunately. But
I seen one of the last pictures after it being sent back to Japan. It was still like orange, but like it was just completely different. Like it was very sad.
Yeah. But and eventually my dad then over that was the last event of the year. That was that event, and then eventually my dad brought me back again. This time just himself and myself, or myself and himself, and we stayed there through the whole event. And I think by then my dad was kind of like, "Oh, this is kind of interesting." Kind of reminded him of the '80s when he used to go to all the rallies and stuff and seen the Mark II Escorts and Mantis and stuff. And eventually Graham just asked him to start judging, because Graham was judging his brother Darren driving, which. I mean, if we look at it now, that's the situation that we're in now.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that
later, if you want, anyway. But yeah, so and he didn't like that idea, so he eventually asked my dad to get involved, and so my dad.
So there
just
was already
got
it was already like competitive by that stage, like.
So it wasn't
just because the way I don't know why, but when you explain like I just imagine like a King of the Cones kind of thing where like just a load of lads in rear wheel drives, like just like except on a course where they were just like Matsurian kind of thing.
Yeah, I to be honest, I'd say apparently it's been going on a lot longer than what I think it was, but from the people that I know personally. But from what I know, it really only started properly in 2002. And back then it was called D1 Series IRL, so it was nothing. It was like kind of like D1 GP, but it was like the D1 Irish Series. Yeah. But the cars were completely stock. You know, there was nothing really done to them. There were mostly people who had a car that went and did, should we say, diffing and rings around cones and stuff.
Yeah.
And then just brought them to the track and attempted to slide them around the corner. And the drifting back then, to be honest, was terrible. Like, you know, I mean, I could teach you what they learned in literally 20 minutes. You know, there was nothing special. Like,
I suppose at the time, but like as you said, they were fairly standard. It was probably just like get whatever reasonably
yeah, exactly. You know,
powerful rear wheel drive you have, and just try and slide down this corner, like.
Yeah, then just go for it, you know, and see what happens. And there was many different people I've seen trying different things. I saw one person putting bags of cement in it to try and like make it slide more by weight, and there's other people like. Taking stuff off the car like their exhausts and everything to reduce weight. There was loads of people doing random stuff, you know. It was kind of funny, but
very experimental.
Yeah, it was just a different type of thing back then, you know. You're just trying new things because there was no information out there. It was all Japanese, you know. So there was nothing you could run from. You couldn't. There was no white type kits to go off and buy and put on your Sylvia, you know. There was just everything had to be custom or everything had to be knowledge based, and there was no knowledge back then.
Yeah, true enough. Even I know it's been a thing since like the 70s and 80s in Japan, but like back then it was still, you'd imagine, probably a pretty niche thing even over there. Like it was still like just for the most part just a load of dudes in the mountains. Like, so for the fact that it even word had spread as far as Ireland, like, and it was becoming a thing back then, like it seems like so long ago now, but like it's probably equal time between then and now than it was between then and like the 80s the 70s. Like,
yeah, 100%. Because like when we started, okay, it was mostly BMWs and A86s. There was no Sylvias and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really only that time that Sylvia started to get popular because of those videos.
They were actually like, the S15 was contemporary back then. Like,
oh no,
that was a modern car.
There was no S15s in the country. I think it was only until 2016 when the first S15 came into Ireland, and I think that was even the UK too. It was 2006 or 2005. Excuse me, and it was and that was the first time an S15 came into Ireland. Now I could be completely wrong because I was only like 12 at the time or 13, so or not even that age at all. I was like 10, so you know those facts are probably completely wrong.
You think about it now, when did the S15 come out? 2000?
Yeah, it was about that.
So that's like the equivalent of taking out and trying to beat around and drag around a 2015 car nowadays. Like.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
which obviously in the case of the FR, like the FRS or the whatever, like the
GTA 6,
GTA 6, like that's. Yeah, I guess that's its intention, like I suppose.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have been commentating. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, back then, you know, there was not anything special, and I mean, it took a long. It didn't take that long, but it took a while before people started bringing in Sylvias, and before you started seeing the Japanese influenced cars. And the driving back then wasn't that great compared to the actual driving we were seeing in Japan. You know, we were looking at the cars in Japan. You were like, holy crap, they got sequential gearboxes and they have these really fancy wheels, and like back when the guys were driving, they were like, if you got any type of suspension arms or anything like that to reduce camber or anything like that, they thought you were mad because you had too much grip. You know, it was all about no grip in your drift car so that you can keep sliding. Whereas in Japan, they were already running semi-slicks, they were already running, you know, 2.1 SR20s, fancy conversions. They were even putting like, I'm pretty sure I've seen videos of people putting like SR20 into AE86s back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So we hadn't even reached that point yet, you know. So yeah, it was a completely different sport. It's like, in a way, it's like comparing Formula D to, you know, some new country that's only got involved drifting now. You know, it's completely different. You know, time scale almost, or not even time scale, but different kind of like, you know, spec of years or whatever.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah. So that's what you basically, to go back to the question and just to wrap it up. That's what got you into drifting, was just you went to an event because your dad was like familiar with or friends with like the people running them.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just kind of seen that, and you were just like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, I attached to it. It was the first thing that I properly saw.
So then, as you mentioned earlier on, you from your confirmation money, you ended up buying a car. At what age did you make your confirmation?
So
13,
okay,
12, 13 or something like that?
it was something like that, yeah. So it would have been at the end of sixth class in school,
Yeah.
in primary school, and going into first year in of secondary school, or I
Yeah,
think they
12
call
or
that high
13, yeah.
school and stuff, or whatever. Um, I had a bit of money. It wasn't a lot, like, because I remember looking on Dundee, which is the Irish website, and
Yeah.
Irish auction website, and just looking at cars, and I was looking at Vauxhall, Tartans or Omegas, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
I could see like €300 or €400, and we ended up spending a little bit of extra and buying a 328 E36 at the time, which nowadays it would have been pretty decent car for a first starter. And we had that, but back then, I didn't really have the money to go any further, and my parents, like, it makes sense. They weren't really willing to put any money into it, because they're like, it's just a silly little hobby. He'll be finished with it in 6 months, and then he'll go off to his next little phase.
I'm surprised to hear that, considering what your dad was doing. Like, I'm surprised to hear that he wasn't sure if he'd stick with it or whatever.
Yeah, well, it's not that they didn't want me doing it. It was more that they wanted to show to me. They wanted me to learn how to use my money properly. And
yeah, that's true.
Daddy and Mammy are not going to be there all the time to pay for everything, And that I understood that as a kid. I didn't expect them to invest. I didn't want anything crazy. I just wanted to have a bit of fun. I wasn't even thinking of competition back then.
Yeah.
It's just like, I just want to have fun, and if I'm going to get into competition, I want to practice so that I'm actually good and leave a good impression when I first start. I didn't want to go into my first competition with just 1 hour practice.
You've definitely done. You've done it the ideal way. You've been driving for what's it now, 5-6 years, and you've only entered the competition as of like last year. I think was your first time.
Yeah, 2015.
Like, that's the perfect way to do it. It's like learn your bearings, get the basics down, then.
Yeah, I mean that's intended to do. So, so it was an E36 328, and I remember I did 2 days in it, and the second day I crashed the car.
I was gonna say, don't think you're getting off lightly here. I will be introducing pictures to represent what we're talking about at certain stages when we're talking about certain cars or incidents or this, that.
Yeah, I know. I can send out any more images if I.
There is a picture of what Alan did to his car, and it's impressive. It's very impressive. I remember seeing it for the first time and like actually being genuinely pretty amazed.
Impressed.
The car was high. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, the car was completely stock. Just had a little roll bar because my dad didn't want me to break my neck or anything if I did roll it, which I was very close to doing so.
I was going to say, you didn't quite roll it on this occasion?
No, I didn't, but I was very close. And the car was on stock suspension, so I'm pretty much what happened was, it had a local, not localish, it's probably even more local too than what it is to me, but it was a little car track in Kilkenny called Kiltarkin.
Yeah.
And they gave us the back section for the day. I was there with actually a fellow IDC driver currently, two of them actually, Shane Mackin and William Hennessy. They're both Chaos 13 drivers in the IDC Pro-Am Championship, so I compete against them now. Yeah. They're in like proper swag style 180SXs. But
I think I've heard of Hennessy. I haven't heard of the first guy, unfortunately.
Yeah, William was another guy we played with probably on Forza 3 actually.
Yeah, that name definitely sounds familiar.
Yeah, and Shane Mackin might have been. Shane was as well for a small bit, but maybe not as common as William.
Yeah,
but we were down there anyway, and I remember going around the top corner and the car being, very soft, and as it was, car kind of snap oversteered and went up the bank. And, I, being a 13-year-old, didn't exactly tighten my harnesses extremely tight, like not as tight as what I would do now. It was a proper scare for me back then, because I actually nearly fractured my rib cage and stuff. It was very sore for a few days. And the funny thing was, at the other side of that bank, there was like a 5-foot wide road and then a 30-foot drop into a quarry. So that was kind of funny.
That's some nice backstory. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I was thinking, I was like, you were saying like it was a close call. I was like, yeah. Well, like if you went over that, and then it was like, because that looked like a steep hill. Even just going down the other side of that hill wouldn't have been fun. Like,
no, it wouldn't have been too bad. But it was just a little dirt road with, probably of what, like 5 or 6 meters, and then down straight into a 30-foot drop into quarry. That's what it was said to me. Now, whether if that was actually true, because I didn't look over the other side of the mountain or the hill to see if there was really a quarry there. But that's what I was told.
That's gonna be one of those things that when you're like 30 and you're talking to your dad or if that's like, remember that time I ran up to him? He'd be like, yeah, remember you said about the quarry? He's like, yeah, no, sorry, that was a joke.
That was just fake. Yeah, that was just to make sure you wouldn't drive again.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so I didn't.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say I didn't drive for probably 3 years after that, mainly because I didn't have the money to fix it myself, and also I got more involved with playing games and stuff. I kind of like didn't really have the interest to work on the car anymore. So I went off and played Forza 4 a lot more, Forza 3 and Forza 4 a lot more, and Call of Duty and all those games and stuff. Kind of lived my later teens, I suppose, as much as I could.
Yeah. Just going to say, because the title for this section of this question, it was like the journey from gaming to the real life, which I guess then will go on to the S14, because eventually you did then pick up a lovely red S14. Yeah, tell us about that. Like, what was the deal with that?
So, I remember being on Dundee again, and just, you know, as like when you're on the time
Dundee, where's that money, by the way? we need this Dundee sponsorship money right now.
Well, like Dundee is like Craigslist, I suppose. So if
it is, it's just Craigslist.
You know what? So I'll just say we were on Craigslist, and I was, but yeah. So I was just like, you know, when you have a broken car or you're just interested in cars, you're always seeing like what's the new car you can buy or you could have bought. And I remember seeing this ad for a fella who was selling an S14, and he you know, he was just, there was no pictures. He was about 10 minutes away from us, 20 minutes away from us. So I was like, Dad, let's just ring him and see if he has it still. So we just decided to have it pop down. We had a look at the car. It was only 20 minutes away from us. And it was S14, completely stock, had coil over us. The engine was there. It was just wasn't running. Yeah. So I don't know. We just offered him what it was, thought was worth, or we offered him, and we got it really cheap. I mean, like, if we had this S14 now, if we found it for the price we bought, or that we had it, we would have probably parted it out or got it ready to road and sold it on for a pretty big profit, because we got this car around the time.
Again, I'll flash up pictures and stuff like that and edit into like show people what it looked like as standard, and then moving through the stage and stuff. So
yeah, so like we got the car around that time, and it was in 2009. No, it was around the end of. It was around still in the I suppose the bad times, the recession. Yeah. So it was probably at its worst, really, because when we got the BMW was when it started. So when we kind of got to 14, it was like really when it was really low. So people were just selling everything as quickly as they could, like, to try and make some money. So we picked up the car for, like, honestly, like €1,200 is what we got it for. And like back then, you know, if you got a car for that cheap, like, you know, you were on the pig's back, because we could have sold the engine off for €1,000 straight away, you know. So. Yeah. But we decided to keep it. We sold the BMW on. We fixed it up. We sold it on, and yeah, we just had it for a small while. There's a funny little story where the car wouldn't start, and there's a common problem with the 200SX S14 that the mobilizer, which is prevents people from stealing the car. Yeah. It's a common problem that it locks the car and won't let you start it, essentially. And so what we were in, so my dad, I was doing my homework upstairs, and next thing, my dad was messing with the key fob, and he realized that it wasn't doing anything. The key fob wasn't doing it. So he changed the battery in the key fob, and the car started. So the guy who originally had the car for €2,000, and then he realized the car wouldn't start. So he brought the price down to $1,200. He had a fella come in, check the fuel pump, checked everything else, couldn't figure out what the problem was, so sold it on as a non-runner.
I laugh, but that, honest to God, sounds like something I'd do. Just something as dumb as checking the key fob.
Yeah. And my dad was like, I don't know. So we went to my sister's little Nintendo DS, or one of those little games that have the small watch battery. So it's basically a watch battery. Ones, yeah, swapped it out, put it into the key fob, and the car started up first turn. And I remember sitting upstairs doing my homework. Next thing I hear was this really loud noise, and I thought it was my cousin next door neighbor, you know, with his little K70 he had, but no, it was an F14 starting up, and I was like, what?
That's bad.
So yeah, that's how we got that.
That reminds me, that simple stupid mistake thing reminds me of the time that I went without internet in my house for about 7 months. It was big. Okay. It wasn't a big deal because I at the time was like whatever 12, 13, and nobody else in the house used it. It was literally just for me, for browsing like fucking old graffiti forums, whatever like that. But for ages, I literally mean multiple months. I think it was about 5 to 7 months I went without the internet, because I didn't understand that like it just disconnects sometimes and just turn it off, turn it back on, fix it. And I thought I'd tried everything. I sent the actual PC away to like a guy that used to live across the road from me, to try and like look into it and see what the deal was. And he was like, no, it looks fine to me. So I don't know why I eventually stumbled upon, or how I eventually stumbled upon it, to turn it on or turn it back off. How I hadn't come across sooner. But like that's literally all it was. I just turned it on, turned it back off, push the reset button, and voila! After like 5 to 7 months, there's internet again. It was the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah, proper like a IT service, whatever.
They're honestly the worst things. You can't feel more stupid than when you do something like that. Did you ever contact that guy and tell him that was the issue?
Nope.
Probably for the best. He'd probably kill himself. He'd probably hang himself if he knew that he sold like at least a $2,000 S14 working fine for 12.
And the thing is, we could have easily told him, because he ended up giving us all the standard bits and pieces that were on the car after, like when he took off the car, and that was after we got the car started. So we could have easily told him, but I wanted my dad to tell him, but my dad was like, "Nah, better not." Because it might end up coming back for it.
I'm going to butt in here and say real quick, for those of you that have been listening to Alan speak there, the voices in the background, that's an ever-present thing in the Hynes household.
No, you can hear voices in the background.
That is something that has been going on since 2008 when I first met him. It's typically his sister, if I'm not mistaken.
It is typically my sister, and she's now growing up, and she still hasn't learned her lesson, so...
It's hilarious. I love that that's a thing, that's still happening. Right, so... where has like the car so from coming from those humble beginnings, basically from being a car that it turns out wasn't dead, it just had a key fob broken or dead, it's gone from being basically completely standard S14 with coilovers. Where is it now? Because as of today, or as of like, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago, it's like a competitive drift car, it's competition winning drift car. It doesn't look hugely different. It's still red. It has a new body kit. It has like new wheels and stuff like that. Nice graphics and stuff like that. But it's still fairly relatively standard looking car. Like what's been the kind of, without obviously going into every single detail, obviously.
Yeah.
Let's not bore myself to death here.
Yeah, no, I could talk for months about.
Yeah. But the long and short, like horsepower increases, engine, like anything, like was there a new engine or like that? Like what kind of like are the big strokes of what's happened with the car?
So I suppose the biggest change really is the engine. So we went with 2JZ setup out of basically a Toyota Supra engine, or this particular engine specifically is out of a Toyota Aristo. Yeah. So it's basically a taxi from Japan. and I mean, this engine is more than capable. I mean, that's the main reason why we went for it, is because we knew that it was a championship winning package with this chassis, this 14, because you have the likes of James Dean, you have Jack Shannon this year to also change to 2JZ. So and obviously the guys in the States as well, there's many drivers over there too. So that's the main reason why we went for it. Also, we could have kept the SR20 and we could have made 500 horsepower with it. Yeah. But to get to that 500 horsepower would have cost €15,000 or something silly like that. And the engine would have had serviced, at least once a year. And there was a high possibility of it blowing up after the first event kind of stuff.
It makes more sense to start like closer on the low end than starting further away on the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Because with an SR20, to get to that power, you have to rebuild it from scratch. You have to not from scratch, but you have to rebuild everything. Whereas with a 2JZ, you just get it, and we did a refresh on the engine, nothing serious, and we just put a slap the turbo onto it, and off we went. So that's what we're looking at here. And with that setup, we can make about 500 horsepower without even opening up the engine at once, which is all you need really for the Irish Championship, and even English Championship, UK Championship too, which I plan on getting to eventually. But yeah, so that was the biggest change, was the 2JZ, and other than that, it's just mostly honestly just a generic build. It's nothing really special that way. But it's what the combination of the right parts and the right team is what makes it a good car.
Yeah. Who did you have, like, any of the lads, McNamara guys or anything like that? Like, who built it, or like who did you do that yourself with your dad, or like was it a project car, or like how did it get put together?
We had originally intended to installing the engine ourselves, but my dad has a kind of a bad back, so I didn't want to put him under that kind of strain. So we ended up getting Darren to build the car. And no, that was kind of the intention anyway, was to get him to do a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the fabrication, or like the engine management, or not the engine management, but the engine connectivity and all that stuff anyway. So he actually built the car pretty much, put everything together. Like he's the guy that pretty much runs it, and the car is currently down there now, getting checked over for the next event. So it's kind of mad, the first guy I saw pretty much drifting is now looking after the car. So yeah, he pretty much built it. I mean, he sent the car up the country to get the roll cage put in by Chris Brady, who actually ended up beating me in Dunleary in the Pro Sunday class. And the car was brought back down here again. We put the engine into it, put Darren's steering kit onto it, and pretty much just drove it out of there, got the car mapped, and made 430 horsepower on a very safe tune. And yeah, just went out there and through to some doors.
You did indeed. Because I think that basically covers that section. Because the next thing up was you just won an event. Like, that's insane. Like, what was that like? Like, you won like an Irish, like, obviously it wasn't the top tier because you're not competing that just yet. But you won your class. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I like
that event for your class, you know.
Yeah, so in my class, yeah. So I mean, so last year I was in the IDC championship, and the year before that I was with the Ultimate Drift Championship, which is like the lower one again.
Yeah.
And I progressed up from a standard S14, which, you know, we were skipping a lot here, you know, even from the stock to, you know, but the car was a lot better than what it originally was when I first got it, obviously. And I just drove it up to that point of where I kind of got my IADC license.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I actually got given an E86 with an SR20 to drive for the year. So that's how I got my Pro-Am license. And I was given that car by the main man himself, Dave Egan, who runs IDC, and he was like, you know,
the Dealt
that's the car. Dealt with 86. You might have noticed it. You might have seen it before.
Very pretty car.
Yeah, very cool car. And he said, you know what? Look, I understand you guys don't have the exact budget to build your 14 in the space of time that you have. So why not just drive my car for the season, and, you know, when you're finished with it, just give it back, kind of a thing. So that's what we did. And I ended up finishing second in that championship. And with that, I got my Pro-Am license. And then we had a bit of time to kind of recoup and kind of like get ourselves settled in. New car.
See, you did, maybe, I don't know, maybe I was just only catching updates and I wasn't noticing time passing, but it really did feel like you put that car together from like, the last time I seen it, it was still the completely stock car with like your R33 wheels or whatever it was. Then, boom, all of a sudden it's stickered up, it's new body kit, it's wheels, it's all ready to go, and all of a sudden you're competing. It's like, what, where did that, like, that was done very quickly.
That was the advantage with going through Darren, because like that's his job essentially, with his guys, is that, you know, he's able to do that. Whereas for myself, I have to go to college, and then, you know, my dad is probably doing, probably, I don't know exactly what he does during the day, but I'd imagine it'd be him working, you know. And so we don't exactly
stuff.
So, we didn't have a lot of time to put it together. And we really only started to build in January of this year. We had left it kind of really, really late. And because of that, we were kind of forced if we wanted it done in time, we'd had to really cut a lot of days. I would have had to leave a lot of days in college and do it. And anyway, this would have been our first car we would have built, which really, you don't want your first car you build as your professional drift car or whatever, you know. You want it to be done right, and that's why we went with Darren, or that's why Darren did it or built it with us or for us and stuff, because, like, you know, we know that his work is top notch. I mean, the guy is driven in the Formula D, you know, he knows what works and what doesn't. And because of that, we were able to build a car very, very quickly. I knew it was
fast, and I'm happy to say that you did only start it in January, because I was like, okay, I'm not crazy then. Yeah, like, it actually has come together in like less than 6 months, because you've already been driving now for
it would have been together probably 3 weeks before round one if we didn't run into the issues that we had. We had a lot of issues getting parts from America and stuff like that kind of set us back. And we had an ECU failure, which really set us back the most. But we would have had that car done weeks beforehand if we actually had everything in Ireland before we actually started to build the car.
So talk through the actual event itself then. So again, without going into details, every like run of every battle like that, but like, what were the kind of highlights? Like, you won it, so like there had to be a few.
So I think it was probably, you see, I find myself as a driver to be more consistent aggression. Like,
keep in mind, sorry, just real quick, it was raining as well.
Yes, well,
it was like it was mostly like, on and off.
Yeah,
like it was wet. It was a wet track.
It was kind of it was dry to wet, and it was like that. It was mostly dry for the day, and then it went wet. So, you know, all the data we had during the day was gone. But first off, we got to that morning. The car had just been graphics. Well, not really graphics, but it was just kind of finished, because for round one we had the car completely rushed to get ready. Had lots of steering issues and stuff. And I ended up nearly having, I don't know how many crashes. I was lucky to get as far as I did. And in round two, we had that all rectified. We had it all fixed and ready to go. And that morning, I was adjusting my shocks to get it set so that I knew where it was. I ended up shearing the top of the shock, which is not ideal, because, you know, you have to be able to adjust your grip, you know, and that's how you adjust it, is obviously adjusting how soft the shock is. And so one side of the car was at 16, which is my highest setting, so that has been rock solid. And then the other side was my only adjustable side that I had all day. So I ended up setting that to 16 as well, for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And then on my way to the line for my first practice run, I ended up pulling the handbrake and the whole brake line split, so I had no brakes. So I went back to the pits and we got that fixed. And so it was just a matter of just getting used to how the car actually handles, because the first round, it wasn't great for us. Yeah. And having okay brakes and handbrake and a car that was rock solid because of shocks not being broken, essentially. So it was a matter of just driving it, making the best of what I had, which was the power from the 2J and the grippy Achilles, and trying to adapt to the track and car with the issues that we were having.
It was also a brand new track as well. They'd never done that.
Yeah, we'd never. It was a completely new surface too. It was a cobblestone surface, so it was a lot of unknowns there. We weren't sure, if it was going to be grippy, if it was going to be no grip. To be honest, I didn't really notice any difference compared to the cobblestones versus tarmac. Other than it being a little bit more rough than usual.
A bit bumpy, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, we qualified pretty decent considering, qualifying. What was I, third or something like that, which finally, after 2 years of properly competitive drifting, I actually qualified the place that around an area where I wanted to qualify. And going into battles, I was just smart about it. That's Darren does a great job. He knows what he's doing when it comes to car setup and stuff. So he was like, I don't want you to lose I don't want you to lose to a slower car because you decide to set it up loose. I want you to make it hard for yourself so that you just basically try not to get caught up behind them by having too much, having so much grip, but let's try not make them so that they're pulling away from us.
Yeah.
So we just set the car up pretty smartly and just kept driving it and making sure I wasn't giving anyone any advantage. So just trying to dominate every single driver.
Yeah.
And it just kept working through every single one of them. And eventually, probably the highlight really was beating the current championship leader in the series, which was I can't remember who won round one exactly, but we ended up getting it as far as the top 8 and beating the guy who I think was a finished second or third in the first round. So that was the first thing, was to get into the top 4. That was a dream, getting into the Pro Sunday, because when you reach the top 4 of the Saturday event, you get a chance to compete in the Sunday event, regardless where you finished in the top 4. Yeah. So first of all, that's the first thing that came to mind. And then we ended up competing against the guy who qualified first, Chris Burnett. And this guy, the complete rebuild of his car. His car is immaculate. It's pretty much a Formula D build minus the engine. Let's say he's got an SR20, but everything else there is what you would see in a Formula D car.
Crazy.
And so we knew this guy was going to be good. So we were lucky in that it started raining for us, and we weren't lucky, but we were kind of unlucky in a way because we had our shock issue. We couldn't go for our full wet setup, only on one half of the car, which wasn't ideal. So we just went out there and we just launched it at him. There was nothing to lose, pretty much. Got into the Sunday, so we just launched it to him, and completely I think completely I think it was, some people were saying it was pretty much the chase run of the weekend, which I don't know what that is.
I watched that event very late, so a lot of it's jumbled up, but I think I know the one that you're talking about, and it was fairly insane.
Yeah, so that was against the white 186 of Chris Burnett, with the red graphics on the side of it and the red rear end on it. And he ended up on my chase run, so he led first. I chased him, and I was glued to him pretty much most of the run. I wasn't 100% happy with my chase run, looking back on it now, because I'm very critical of my driving. But
of course.
It was decent considering the conditions in my first real wet run of the track. And then on my lead run, he was just pretty much, he was not anywhere close to me. And then eventually his boost pipe ended up coming off, and he ended up basically handing me the win. Then we went into the final against the guy who beat me in round 1, who's in a standard E36 M3 with on road tires. And we were again, let's not make this guy get away from us, so we went straight in, full kill mode, and it was patchy, so we weren't sure, should we go wet setup or dry setup? We ended up going wet setup, and it ended up being a lot more dry, so the car was super hard to drive, but
proper grippy, is it?
Yeah, it was proper hard to drive, but we ended up making it work and ended up coming home with the win. So it was it was definitely.
Again, if I can find any pictures, I hope you might know have some pictures. Yeah, no, hand, I won't get copyrighted or anything like that for using.
No, as long as you don't remove the watermark, I'm pretty sure people.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. I'll just it up. Right, so that was the last event. When is the next one coming up?
So, our next event is Global Warfare, which is around 3 of the Irish Championship, and it's the event where the European Championship comes to Ireland. and competes against the Irish. It's more of a kind of like a Ireland versus Europe kind of
they
like
do they to see who tries
like,
to end the streak.
who wins, you know.
Has that streak been broken yet? I don't think so.
No, it hasn't.
Still going, isn't it?
Yeah, so Ireland hasn't been beaten in 14 years, since we started drifting in Ireland.
And is that only at the round 3 of it, like at the round 3, or is that just ever?
Like just ever, like Irish drivers have never been beaten on Irish soil.
For people watching that now who didn't see my video at the time, that includes Matt Powers, Daigo Saito, I think Von Gittin Jr. was here a couple of years ago.
Okay, let me think of all the names. So that include, like, I mean, the list is crazy. You're nearly
like Daigo Saito, who was like who beats everything in everyone in everything. Like
Daigo Saito is probably the biggest one there. But Daigo Saito, Robin Nishida, a lot of foreign
Nishida was in there,
like mid-European drivers that I can't even remember. Some French people like Jerome Bastille. There's a couple of people. Matt Power is probably another known one. But yeah, there's been a lot.
Morrison from Drifter.
Yeah, Phil Morrison. There's a lot of UK guys too. We've been close for the streak to be beaten like many times, but it hasn't been beaten yet. To be honest, I actually hope it does get beaten. As much as I hate to say it, it's like it's another one of these things where like it just gets annoying. It's just like, please, someone beat it. I'd actually nearly like move to another country and like become a citizen there and come back and actually didn't beat it that way, so that they stop talking about it. But yeah,
like I know I keep saying about that one specific one that I went to a couple of years ago, but like what's crazy is that the one that Daigo, Nishida, and Powers attended, that was won by an Irishman, obviously, but it was also won by Jack Shanahan, I think it was.
Or
was it? No, Dwayne McKeever. Sorry,
yes,
Dwayne McKeever.
Yeah, Dwayne McKeever.
And Dwayne was like 17, 16 at the time.
Oh, I think he was a bit older than that. I think.
I think I'm Jack.
2014 you went. I'm pretty sure it was 2014.
Yeah, 14 is.
Maybe it's 2014, and so we're 2017. So yeah, that was 3 years ago. I would have been 17. No. Yeah. 18, something like that. Yeah, 18.
The point stands
19.
That Dwayne, as a very young lad, like
the
streak wasn't beaten back then 3 years. As a very young dude,
Dwayne is a couple of months older than me. Okay, to put it in perspective, he's like approximately 6 months older than me. So he's currently 21 at the moment. So you know he's won the championship. He beat Daigo Saito in his RB26 186 with an issue. So it was running on 4 cylinders. So it was not even running on full power. It's probably running about 250 horsepower. He beat Daigo Saito in Mondello in a broken car when he was 19. So that was kind of cool.
It was crazy. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was an awesome event.
But yeah, so that's the round 3. That's obviously back at Mondello, is it?
Yes, so you will be back in front of the grandstand again with a new layout, so it should be pretty spectacular. And
another new layout.
Yeah, another new layout. It's not brand new. It's like the third
or fourth since
it's more of a more of a reconfiguration of an existing layout, should we say? So it's more of a just doing it slightly differently. Not slightly different, a lot more differently, but kind of more like the opposite direction, should we say? But it will.
I think my favorite one so far has been your one that you made the version of it, the South Corsa. That layout that was
the main
year,
like
I think.
So like the Jaffest layout where you
coming down out around the 4 corners usual, but then cutting back in with the 2 wall taps and then going back around the 4 corner.
So that's the layout we mostly do, but this time we'll be heading the opposite direction, so we'll be heading down the main straight. I don't think it's been confirmed yet, but we'll be doing main straight, I'm pretty sure. So it'll be something different. We'll be going underneath the bridge, so it'll be like a normal Mondello track that you normally have there.
Yeah, heading into first corner.
Yeah, so like again, like it should be pretty insane. Competing on the Saturday as well for that, so try to get another top 4 there and try and go up against the European guys on the Sunday.
That should be really cool. Is there any rumors or anticipated or plans for any other like world beaters?
Well, you see, I mean, I've talked to this about this to the event organizer Dave Egan, and he was kind of like saying, you know, he doesn't really need these world beaters anymore. He's like, the Irish scene is so good that it's like anytime they have come, they've been a disaster. Like Saito and Robin Ishii came there a few years at Jaffest with their own cars, and they were useless. Like they're absolutely terrible because the cars they brought were just shit. Like honestly, and so by bringing the European stage, they can bring their own, like their proper cars, and they can really fight it out. And because they're our best drivers in Ireland, they're pretty much European champions anyway. kind of like we still end up pretty much beating them.
It keeps the streaks fairly safe.
Yeah, it's not super straight. It's super safe. I mean, there's been many times it's been nearly beaten by these guys, like, but it's certainly getting harder and harder every year, should we say? But certainly the talent in Ireland is making it harder and harder for them to beat it. So yeah,
it's crazy because it's not even just like the fact that there's like a current like lineup of great drivers. They keep coming younger and younger and younger. Like you and Declan are now at this stage probably like the middle generation. Like at this stage, there's even younger lads and youths come up now and getting like doing well in the young
exactly.
the lower leagues. Like.
In a way, we're kind of the start of the next generation, since because the older generation, should we say, okay, obviously it's older than me, but there isn't really an age limit because Jack Shanahan would be an older generation driver, if that makes sense, but he's younger than me. And
that's why I'm trying to use like generation and not
because when I mean generation, I mean okay, like me and Declan started on Xbox, like Forza. Now Declan has taken the year out this year, but we started on Xbox, and that's how we got started. But there's many drivers like the likes of Jack Shanahan, and then there's Ryan Calvin, who's younger again, who really haven't used the gaming to their advantage. They've just kind of gotten into it by having a car, let's say, and because of
I was going to say like they don't have to like rely on gaming. They literally just come from families where it's just
it's a little bit easier for them.
They just have the cars already there.
Yeah, pretty much. And
like I think the obvious example that always comes to mind is Conor Shanahan. Like he's an amazing little drifter, and he's only like 12, 13 now.
Yeah, and
14, 15 now, whatever it is.
I mean,
like,
I actually consider him again a new generation driver, like myself and Declan, because he's been using R Factor quite a bit. Like that's how he's progressed as a driver. I helped him out get started there, and
but on the other hand, he also has like a competition spec car that's just been in his family's. That's just been there for like 5 years now.
Yeah, he has a championship winning car. His brother won a championship in that car recently, the DC championship. It's not like it's anything weak or low powered or anything. It's a pretty serious car.
Yeah.
But as I was saying about the generation thing, I do believe that me and Declan, should we say as an example, and likes of Conor Shanahan and some other drivers that haven't really made it into the big scene yet. We are the new generation, and I think there's a lot of because we're using the gaming for us to progress. I
was going to say there is some questions that I had towards the end. Well, not the end, but like the last little bit basically is going to be specifically about the gaming.
Okay, cool.
But the last thing that I wanted to say is, so you won the last event, you're hoping to win the next one. What are the chances that you'll win because your dad's a judge?
Highly unlikely, I would imagine.
No, that's my way of introducing this. So you mentioned earlier on that your dad is in fact the head judge of IDC. Now,
yes.
That's not something that, like, for anybody that knows you or knows your dad or knows like anything about the IDC and the way just the Irish lads handle the championship, that isn't an issue. But there's always going to be people that are like, oh, he won that event, his dad's head judge. Ooh, like, does that actually come up? Do you ever hear like rumors or sneakiness or like that in the paddocks? Like?
No, because this is actually the first time I've done good enough an event with him judging. So this is the second event we've ever done with him judging and me competing, which is the one that I won. Before that we had that's the third event. So before that we had round one, which got knocked out in the top 16 from a car issue, just driver excuses. And the round before that, which was Jaffest last year when I was driving that E86, I got knocked out again from making a mistake. And again, my dad was judging all those three events. It's been a question that we've asked because it is a very awkward position for my dad because he's been known in the scene for many, many years as a very consistent and a really a consistent judge. He doesn't show any bias. He doesn't really care who you are. If you drive good or drive awesome or you do what he tells you to do and you do it, like he'll give you what he give you the score. He'll give you what he'll give you the reward essentially.
And what's it like for you actually in the car, like, especially because I don't know, it's like as like a father son thing. Like, do you want to be out there like just being like, oh, I'm gonna show my dad I'm super awesome, like I'm gonna be like,
well, like
I'm gonna try and show off or something like that, just so my dad he doesn't even need to like.
I don't really think about it. I just go out there and just drive, Like, I just drive the way that I want to drive.
Because there's also both sides of it. So one of the people that I respect a lot for their opinions on bias and like when you're doing like reviews, for example, on like a game or something like that, Total Biscuit, he has a great stance on bias in that he doesn't think you should, like, say again with the game an example, he doesn't think that you should like review a game or something like that, if you have any like relationship with the developers, not only for, because everybody always jumps to the negative and be like, oh, it's going to be biased because he's going to say great things, but it's also the negative thing. There's also the idea that your dad could also like maybe bump you down like a point or something like that, because
and that's why he just
doesn't want this to be seen to be favoritism. Like he can actually negatively affect.
If you watch any event that I competed in with him judging, so for example, the Dunleary one is a perfect example because you'll see it straight away. He said to me, he doesn't want to be putting himself into a position where he's giving me the win over a situation where it could have been a one more time or should have been a one more time, let's say. He doesn't want to show that. And there's been many times, if you look at a score, there's one particular battle that comes to mind, and the other two judges win with a 7-3, 7-3 advantage. So 7-3 to me, 7-3 to me, and then my dad 6-4 to me. There's another one as well where he
and you firmly believe that was just him being like, okay, I'll give him a 6-4 just so people are aware.
And he said that to me before. He says, Alan, before we start competing, there's two things going to happen: either you can't drift, or else I'm going to have to step down from judging. And neither of us wanted that to happen, because I don't want to retire my dad, because he's only getting started when it comes to judging stuff. And the event organizer Dave, he was like, guys, look, my brother's been competing in this series for how many years? No one's complaining about bias, and he's won many events, within the lower ranks and come up. He's competed really good. So if it works like that, that my brother can compete and I'm commentating or whatever, surely, people should be okay with Kieran Hynes and his son competing. And I was completely aware going into these events that there might be a scenario where I will get pretty much fucked over a call because of him having to be slightly more biased towards the other driver to make sure that I don't get a win from his bias, or bias, should we say, and not really, he's not really biased, but from people what they would say call a bias. And we were just he's just making sure that he's not showing that bias through his scoring. So it just means that I have to go out there and destroy every single person that I come up against.
Basically, yeah. And just leave it without doubt.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been kind of working out in a way, because like every battle I go for, I just make sure that there's at least some sort of tire mark on the door, at least anyway.
Yeah, at least one.
So, I mean, look, it works out fine. I mean, there's been no people mentioning anything to me. There's one guy mentioned to me, actually, he asked me, how is it going to work? Because again, he had the same question, what happens? Has anyone said anything to you? And I was like, no, not really. He was like, I couldn't give a shit, because like I know your dad is not a biased person, like he's not like that. He doesn't really care who you are. But you're always going to get people that are going to be like that anyway. And I just think, if it came to a decision where people are posting shit on my timeline or my wall or whatever, I would probably end up responding to them. But until that point of where it's not, like, I just going to ignore them, like, because most of the time unless it was a very dodgy call where I could see that maybe I shouldn't have won, because like I'm very open-minded that way. I don't really care what I express my mind that way. But
you don't. Sorry, go on.
If for example, if there was a situation where I got the win when I believe I shouldn't have, and there was a lot of shit online about it, I might then respond to turn and say, look, I don't believe it call in the end either, but look, we get the win and we move on, and that's how it works. That's drifting.
But like, you think if anything that's less likely to happen than your dad actually just like calling one more time, just playing it safe.
Yeah, and if that happened, I'm happy enough, because I'm a complete. I pretty much accept. Before I got into competition, I accepted that could happen, and that I could lose a championship over him, making sure that he doesn't show bias.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me.
No, I thought it was important to touch on the negative thing, because that's even more interesting, if anything, than the positive stuff. Because obviously, like, you can spot and you can call out and you can try and correct the positive stuff straight away if he's giving you extra points where you maybe don't deserve them. But it's like, what do you do when he's like actively hindering you? If he's like,
I mean, like, he really has, like, obviously,
he's in a tough position, like,
we're a team at the end of the day, and he has an interest in me doing good, of course, because it's not like I got this money from nowhere, but he has to be careful, what he decides when in the judgment call, and it's not like exactly handing me everything. I have to still work for a lot of it.
Is there a thing, like, how did because what I was thinking, like, how would you kind of mitigate this so he's never put under pressure? I presume my solution that I thought of really quickly in like 10 seconds, which is probably going to get shot down, has been dumb. I'll just always have him call his score out first in your battles. If you know what I mean, or does that make sense? Like have him, have him reach his reach his point decisions first before anybody else. So he doesn't know, like, if he knows if he knows maybe that it's two like a 7-3, or like what would it be, like a 5-5 or whatever.
Yeah.
And like it's his call to make whether it's a 6-4 or 6-4 go in whoever's direction.
Well,
like always have him just go for us, and I'd be like, okay, well I gave it like a 6-4 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, okay. When I meant earlier that he goes one score down, he doesn't like obviously always do that, because you can't like if someone went 5-5, 5-5, and then he went 6-4 to the other guy, when really it was technically speaking a 5-5. I don't think he would be that opposite, let's say. But there has been scenarios where he would,
It was still a win for you, but just by less of a degree. Like.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. And he's just only doing that as a kind of like a safety barrier kind of a thing. I mean, there's probably been many times when
he knew it was clearly a win for you, but he's just like
he's seen he gave me a 7-3, and he probably expected the other guys to give him an 8-2 or give me an 8-2 or the other guy an 8-2, but excuse me, and then they end up with a 7-3 all across the board, because there was some scenarios where they ended up giving a 5-5, 5-5, 5-5. He didn't change his score at all, and there was other scenarios when he gave me a 6-4 and the other two judges gave me a 7-3 advantage. And there was another time when another judge gave me an 8-2. I got a 7-3 and a 7-3 from my dad as well. So it's not like he's purposely knocking 1 point off me every single time and giving another point to another driver. It's more, it's under the scenario of the battle and depending on what I did good or what I did bad. Generally, anyway, when it comes to judging, my dad would be fairly critical on drivers doing stuff, right? So you might always see my dad being a little bit down on scores to other drivers anyway. But it's just a matter of, like, he's just making sure that he's not putting himself into position, and he's not putting myself into position, more so himself really, of being a biased judge.
Absolutely, yeah. No, well, that's basically a wrap up there on that the dad thing, because I told you beforehand that we just have to touch on it really quickly, because it is just a thing to when you mentioned it.
And I like talking about it because it's an interesting subject too, because it is many sports in general. And I think drifting is probably one of those sports where you would see a slight bias more so than, let's say, BMX or skateboard competitions, let's say, especially from family anyway. But it's an interesting subject, and I mean, we've only done, this is our third event with this kind of, this combination of him being judge and me being driver, and next event also will be the fourth event. So I mean, it's still early days yet. We may find out in a year's time that we get a lot of shit from it, but until one person talks, you're never going to hear anything of it.
It'd be interesting to see if there's any kind of, like, again, I'm not like one of these big drama people or controversy people really, but it will be interesting to see if there's ever like an event or a situation or a battle around like that where it's really controversial and it turned out like his decision did swing it. Yeah. But that's just firmly what he believed, like, at his heart. But if for some reason, like, the other judges didn't agree you got the win, but he really just genuinely did. It'd be interesting to see what happens if that was to ever be a thing.
It's kind of hard to answer that, like, because we never
obviously,
know,
that's just like, and all that,
It's certainly interesting, and I don't think he said to me pretty much that, look, if there was a scenario where it was super close and it should have been one more time, but it could have been, let's say if it was a scenario where it was so close it could be one more time, but like it wasn't really enough to be one more time, he would give it to the other guy, kind of a thing. It'd have to be like, I'd actually honestly would have to dominate the guy to be guaranteed to win. From him, his decision, as the other two judges, he doesn't really care. But from his point of view, he has to make sure that I have to either dominate the guy or beat him clearly. If it's a one more time or whatever like that, the other guy is definitely going to get the win, or not definitely, but more than likely he's going to get the win. But yeah,
and as he said, he's like that to everyone. He is just fairly strict as a judge.
Yeah, he will be fairly strict.
Really wants to see good hard driving. Right, so we'll wrap up on that. Then we'll go to games, because obviously that's how we met. It's what I do on the channel here for the most part, drifting in games, stuff like that. So you are, like, currently, if I'm not mistaken, you are still active in the sim drifting community.
Yeah.
So we'll start off with the wheel then. So, like, the first good wheel that you got was probably the Trustmaster one, was it?
Well, actually, so I had a Fanatec before. So that was around Forza 3. So when we were playing on Forza 3, I would have had a Fanatec at that time. 900 degree 911 turbo S. And I had that for about 4 years before, and like, honestly, I had it for 4 years, and we rebuilt it. I don't know how many times to actually stay going. Like, just honestly, I don't even think there's a human out there on the market really that is any better than its competitors when it comes to reliability. You know, when you buy something like that, you're just expecting it to break eventually. But yes, then I had that on. Ended up after Forza 4, when the new Xbox was, I decided to buy a PC, and I went, you know, R Factor, and I got a Trustmaster T500 after a few months after my Fanatic dying, yeah, just pretty much, you know, just got a Trustmaster T500. Pretty much bit the bullet, you know. I decided, look, if I'm going to stay on this, I'm going to stay on it for a bit. Yeah, pretty much, you know, just like what we did with the 2JZ conversion in the car. But I mean, at the time it was kind of expensive, but they're kind of come down in prices quite a bit recently. Yeah, just got a Trustmaster T500.
Like the shit show that was that sentence that I tried to get out earlier was like, how did you get the feeling of the wheel of the full 900 degrees? Like, how well did that translate into real life? And kind of like, because if I remember correctly at the time, you said that it's actually harder to drift in real or in the games with these wheels than it is in real life because you can't feel the weight shift. Has your opinion changed on that? Or?
It's a weird thing because, you know, I use it as a practice bed for my driving, so I mostly use it for tandem practice. Like when I was first got onto the scene and I was doing really good with my stock 14, a lot of people were thinking, you know, if they got the game, that they'd become, you know, awesome, like become amazing, like 10 times better than what they would become if they never got into it. And I'm not saying that, like, if you get into it that you're not going to become better. I'm just saying that just because you box every night doesn't mean you'll become a boxer better than, you know, Conor McGregor or something like that. Or, you know,
like just because you're real good at FIFA doesn't mean you're going to go out and beat Messi and Ronaldo.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't guarantee that. It does help. I mean, using the gaming stuff, is the sim drifting stuff really helps with tandeming and stuff. But other than that, it's nothing really that beneficial. Like, I believe I'd still be at the same stage of competition. It would have taken me a little bit longer to get to where I am now competitively in real life, but I believe that if I started at the same time, I would have gotten to the same stage I am now eventually. You know, I'd still be as good
without the gaming, like
without the gaming. Yeah, I believe that to a certain extent. Obviously, there'd be some things like tandeming and stuff that I probably wouldn't be as good. That would take me a little bit longer to adapt to. But there's a lot of stuff I've learned from the gaming and using, say, like a set of Corsa and R Factor, LFS even, that I've kind of adapted and kind of, you know, memorized as a memory muscle thing, you know, to do in the car as well in real life too. So it's just a matter of just using.
Because it gives you like, it's like, because you don't have to have any fear. Like, you can literally just bash other cars, stuff like that. Like, it lets you learn the kind of
and the thing is too,
the distance or whatever like that.
Because there's no real money there. You could just build the best car.
Yeah,
you know, and you just go out there and you just build your best car in Forza. You put 650 horsepower into it, you know, whatever rules that FMD or what rules that there were back then. Put 650 horsepower into it. You put the biggest tire you can, the sport tires, whatever, and you just go out there and just drive it. And it was like super easy, you know, and that's super easy considering the game, you know. And and there was you just learned how to just plant the throttle and use the steering, you know. And whereas when you go to real life, you have to learn how to drive the car because you don't have 650 horsepower and, you know, YSAP steering, whatever. You have 200 horsepower and you have to make what you have work because you don't have the budget to build a 650 horsepower with big tires. And there's a lot of differences that you don't actually learn from the game when it comes to real life. Like,
I was gonna say, what's the feeling like? So people say like that the sim games are realistic, like Set a Course, Live for Speed, R Factor, all that. They say that they're realistic. If you have a really good wheel and like you're playing one of these games, like it's certain mods or whatever, like there's a lot of people that say it feels like a real life. Like they almost don't notice the difference. Like but I just can't believe that. As I said, I've never drifted. I don't know if I said it, but I haven't been drifting in real life. I'm going drifting. I'm doing the Project Academy. I don't know what it's actually like to drift a car, but I can't imagine it's that close. Like
it's okay. So the steering rotation and the concepts of steering the steering wheel are exactly the same. So everything regarding the steering wheel and the handbrake and the clutch and the brakes and the accelerator and the shifter are exactly the same. It's just you don't receive as much information from the steering wheel as you do in real life. Because like
is that like in the weight of it? Because I just feel like, again, no experience, so like I feel like it's almost too easy. Like just the wheel just feels so light and like obviously in a set of course I've got like FFB clip, which is like just it supposedly gets each individual car like perfectly where it should be for like just specified whatever like that.
Yeah, so that you're not maxing out the motor and the steering wheel or whatever.
Yeah, like so it's not super heavy or super light. It's supposed to be just right. But again, it feels like it's. I feel like if I get into a car, and I know like the whole thing. Like I've driven cars before. I know as you pick up speed, the wheel gets lighter and stuff like that. But is it actually that light and that kind of easy in a decently set up car? Like?
Yeah. So I mean, what we usually find, because I also instruct at the academy too. So hopefully we're trying to line it up so that
yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah.
But I mean you can kind of tell someone who has some sort of experience, whether it be previously in real life or whether it be in the game. And generally, the younger generation or the younger people would have more experience in the game. And like, there's one scenario before when Academy first started many years ago, and the instructor got out of the car and he was like, I can tell he has more experience than he says, and that was just from the gamepad alone. And it's mostly like with drifting, it's mostly throttle control that steers the car. Steering's mostly in one direction, you're just directing it where you want to go, and it's mostly the throttle that steers the car. And it's this very same concept in real life as well. Well, obviously, in both gaming and in real life, throttle control is very, very important. And so with that, the steering becomes a very minor part in the actual drift, in both scenarios in the game and whatever. No, okay, I mean that in a way that, if you have a really shitty car on a set of Corsa, let's say, and the steering's super heavy or super light or something, in a way you can still drift it. You know what I mean? And it's the same in real life too. You can drift anything you want. But it's just the concepts of how the steering wheel reacts is pretty much identical. It's just the information that you get from the game is completely different to what you get. When I mean the information, you don't feel, let's say, you don't feel, a lot of the time, you don't feel the sensation of speed when you're playing the game. You're sitting in a cockpit and you might have motion blur or whatever on, but you don't actually you don't feel like you're going 60 miles an hour or 120 kilometers. And when you go into a corner, you don't feel your body being thrown or being lifted. I
was going to say, because I feel like that has to be super helpful. Like.
Oh, it's a massive difference, and that's why it makes it so much easier for myself, because when I go into a corner and I flick it in and I transition and then going uphill, I can feel when the car starts to get light and when to accelerate and everything. You don't get that in the game. So when you go over a jump in the game and you mash the throttle and you spin around, it's because the car got light, but you never knew that the car got light because you never felt it. And it's just small things like that.
So in a weird way, it is literally, to really simplify it, it actually is in theory probably easier to drive in real life than it is in the game.
It is, because you get
so much more feedback.
Yeah. Because I've driven the cars in the game, and I've driven stock cars in the game, and the feel is very similar to that of the, let's say, the stock car, the Drift Disease Academy cars, let's say. But the massive difference is that the Academy cars, or when you're driving the real car, let's say, you can feel what it's actually doing. When you're kind of going up on the camber and you feel, the back left gripping up, to plant the throttle more or whatever to keep it going. Whereas in the game, you could be drifting along and next thing you catch a bit of grip and you don't really realize it as such, and you have a massive correction. Whereas in the real life, you can really, in the real life, when you're actually driving
IRL.
Yeah. It feels so weird saying it. It's kind of weird saying that, but anyway, you can kind of predict it a lot more, and by the feel through your butt, let's say, and the seat and all that.
I was literally going to say that it's funny that you mentioned that, because the example that makes the most sense in my head is the idea of weight, or what you call them, weight transfer entries. What are they called?
So what? Feints? Yeah.
Scandinavian flicks.
Yeah.
So I feel like in a real car, like when you do that flick, the first flick in the opposite direction, I feel like you'll feel, say on your left arse cheek, for example, you'll feel that, okay, I'm this far on my arse cheek, now I know it's time to turn the other way.
Well, it's not.
I just feel like that's...
Oh, well, unfortunately, it's not that.
I know that's super
you're sitting,
specific.
let's say, in the Academy car now, you're sitting in a leather seat, so there's a lot of cushion there. And depending on how big your ass is too, you might feel a lot less than others, let's say.
But that's specific on the ass. I know that was very specific, but you know what I mean? Like you feel like the car roll or whatever like that. Like you feel it lean this direction. You kind of, like, that you're on this side of your body. Like that's the way the weight's going, and then you're like, okay, this is enough. Now I know to turn it back the other way. Well, that's the example in my head. It's probably not as extreme or as literal as that, but
like, more with the steering, if anything, how much you need to rotate the car to get sideways or whatever. And obviously, when you're looking straight and you're now realizing that the front of the car is pointing in the opposite direction or a little bit more left, you kind of realize, oh, okay, we're going a different direction here. We're going into for a flick entry. But it's more when I'm talking about the feeling, more it's the sensation that, holy crap, I'm going in here quite fast. It's that kind of, how much faster must I, how hard must I drive to get to that point? And, you know, as I said, you know, when you're feeling the weight through the car and you're feeling the weight, you know, through the seat, and you're feeling your body being thrown around, especially if you have a stock seat in the car, you feel that more so when you're going fast, let's say, and you're trying to find, you know, your position on the track or whatever, more so than that in the game. Going back to your flick entry thing, it's more so with the steering that you're noticing the direction that you're going, more so than the weight of your butt cheek, let's say. But it's like,
that's weird. I was convinced that would be the big difference.
It's not really, because, you know, you're going straight. You know, the car is only at a slight angle. It's not like if you're going from one direction, so you're at full lock, let's say, going right, transition left. That's when you feel that force of transition from the car. But you'd be surprised that it's not like, you know, you see those motion simulators things, okay, and you see them to go around the corner, the thing is going left and it's going right. It doesn't really feel like that at all. It doesn't really seem like that anyway. You know, you see those things, the person get it thrown around and then, you know, they hit the wall and the thing goes, wow, really forward or anything like that. It doesn't really feel like that in the car as such. Unfortunately, I've never had a head-on collision like that serious, but honestly,
I suppose that's to do with the suspension and the way it's set up, like being kind of stiff or everything.
I mean,
obviously the whole point is to be the
exactly. I mean, those similar setups, I mean, they're not exactly. I mean, they're only replicating something in real life. And I mean, same with the games, they're only replicating something in real life. They're not exactly fact as such, but.
Right. Well, that's got me. That's one of the things that I've always wanted to ask you about, is just like to go deeper into that thing that I asked you before, like. Because that's just, I honestly, honest to God, for some reason, I always thought that weight example was the big difference, being able to feel the actual weight underneath you in the car. Like. But yeah, so we're well into it now. So like, as far as sim games, you mentioned a couple. We've all talked about a few: Settle Course, Live for Speed, R Factor. I guess iRacing, if you want to include all of them. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go sim arcade, and back to our roots, Forza. What's your personal poison? What's your preferred one if you had to pick one? If you could only pick one sim forever, I think I know what's going to be, but it's not what I think you think. I think.
So when you mean sim, do you just mean like simulator, or do you mean kind of like the games that I play on the computer, or do you mean more so like back to the roots of any racing game essentially?
Well, specifically, I asked as I wrote down specifically for drifting. So like, if you were to, if I was to say, here's your drift game, you have your setup, you have your screen, you have your computer, but you can only have one game. Which would you pick for Desert Island? I guess.
Okay, so it usually depends on my mood. But if I had to pick a game, if I had to pick a go-to game, if I wanted to go online and if I wanted to practice something, I would pick LFS Speed.
Really?
Yes.
Damn it! That was neither of them.
It's weird because, you know, I play Assetto Corsa and I get very frustrated at how annoying the mods are. They're just like they just imagine what I'd feel, what a terrible setup drift car in real life would drive like. They're just not. I don't mean to hurt. I don't mean to like annoy or to put any of those guys down or anything. I've driven some private cars that have never been released or even been seen before by some people, and they feel absolutely amazing. Like Assetto Corsa is a fantastic base that they can really work on if people learnt, put more time into their cars, making them, and like the game would be amazing. Honestly, like better than LFS, better than R Factor, better than anything. Like really, really good. It would really narrow the gap from the transition from real life or from the game to the real life, because you know it'd be so much easier. But it's just, you know.
And in what way is it? Are they like too easy, or are they too hard, or
they're just unpredictable? Right? They're just like too hard. Yeah, you know. And that's what annoys me. You know, you may say, oh, you know, realism is all about hard, but like that's the same. You know, methodology or same, you know, thought or whatever that Need for Speed had with their shift games. They were like, oh, let's make it super hard, so super realistic. And like the games, like, I'm sorry, like, you know, all like, you know, you get into a real car and you drive it. It's easy. Like there's nothing crazy there. It's not like when you turn the steering wheel that it shudders to the point of where you break your wrists, or you put your seatbelt on and you brake, that you go through the windscreen or anything like that. You know, it's very simple, it's very easy, and it's the same with a drift car in a way. The only difference is that you're going obviously faster, you're going sideways at an opposite direction. but the car still acts the same. When you turn left, the car turns left. When you turn right, the car turns right. When you accelerate, the car still moves forward. I don't understand. When I accelerate forward, the car just snaps over still. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, I mean, I could say, look, that's power or whatever, but it's like, they're just not stable. They're just very unstable. They just don't make any sense.
What's, out of curiosity, of like a public mod that you've tried, what's a good, like, what's probably the best, if you can think of off the top of your head, like a set of course a mod that you've played that's as close to like LFS or Factor or whatever?
I quite like using the Drift Workshop. They have pretty decent cars. They're mostly street style cars, so they're always more manageable, and they don't mess up the steering geometry as such for big angle. Like, they're kind of set, look, let's go standard steering lock, let's say, which makes it a lot easier to drive. Any of the cars like STC, let's say, you know, they have big angles. I don't know how much angle exactly, but
there's actually
they usually mess up.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say that they usually have big angle setups, and let's say the steering geometry of Ackerman stuff is wrong, so the cars handle like crap. They handle like Weissfab, which if you handle like a Weissfab car that hasn't been set up properly, it handles like terrible. Absolutely terrible. And usually people that have Weissfab set up cars, Weissfab being a steering kit, that is, they usually set up a lot differently to what it is comes out of the box. And so, like, a lot of the stock standard cars with the proper Ackerman and stuff handle a lot better and much more manageable. They're still not perfect, because they still have weird quirks and things that, like, no matter what car setup you could do in real life to fix the car setup you do in real life to fix that, it doesn't fix in the game. Don't know if that's just a game issue or if it's just a mod issue, but it's very hard to find a really good mod that doesn't want to bite you in the ass every 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's one of my frustrations, that I can play for a while, and like, if I'm in, do you know when you get in like the groove or something like that, where you just everything you do works, you backwards entries are good. Like, I can go into sessions like that where it's grand, but every now and again, like, maybe even probably equal amount of time, like, you'll get in and just a car that you're driving brilliantly, like last night, for some reason, like, you just aren't in it or whatever like that, or whatever. But then it's the exact same thing that you're talking about, like the snap oversteering, like, you'll be doing like what should be a relatively straightforward entry or everything, and then all of a sudden the cars just flick out away from you, and you're just like,
like, and you mentioned there about backwards entry. It's very easy to do backwards entries in the game, but you very rarely see it in real life. And that's going back to, again, of how badly set up, not badly set up, or how, in a way, wrongly set up they are for drivability. The cars are set up in the game for backwards entries to be kind of, in a way, whereas in real life you set the car up so that when you do a backwards entry, the thing will either spin or else it'll straighten up. Like, it doesn't do backwards entries very good. And my car will do the same. I can't do very big entries like you can do in the game. And it's all down to the Ackerman setup. You know, if you just a certain Irish driver right now who runs a very similar setup to, let's say, what you would see in the STC cars, and he's doing backwards entries everywhere. You know, so in that sense, if you want a very good backwards entry car in real life, you just set it up like the STC cars, but they're not very drivable. You know.
There was actually, what I was about to interrupt you earlier on was when as soon as you mentioned SEC, a thread on the Assetto Corsa subreddit popped up earlier, or yesterday, talking specifically about the SDC cards, and it, like, that Assetto Corsa subreddit is like usually pretty dead, and the thing got like 50 something upvotes. Apparently, like, the large majority of online servers at the moment on Assetto Corsa are running SDC mods. Which are just like exclusively SDC mods, because like they're like, and like he was ranting about the fact that they're easy or something like that, like, or they're whatever it is about them, that they're like, they attract like basically peasants, casuals.
We see, I mean,
which makes me feel bad, because I remember the first time I drove them, was the S14 in particular. I was like, "Ooh, this feels good." Like, not that it feels good. I don't know. Like, it felt good.
Yeah, we see.
It felt fun, if you know what I mean, like, to play with.
Okay, so like, I find drifting in real life very easy. No, like, I mean, for someone else might find it difficult. I say it's easy because I picked it up. Maybe it's one of my natural talents, and I just find it very easy that way. Same with playing like an instrument or something. You know, some people find it easier than others. Yeah. But you know, when I go to the game and I drive the SDC cars, they're easy to drive, but they're difficult in that they don't drive the way that I want them to drive, and that's because the way they've been modded. And I understand
no amount of setup can fix like what you're finding.
Yeah, pretty much. You'd have to really go back through the files and actually reset up their steering geometry and stuff.
Yeah.
To fix that. And I mean, car setup, you can actually do some car setup stuff to the issues, but it's not the right way to do it. The car should be set up right from the go. But like the likes of of the that potential person you were mentioning said that it was easy. That's really the biggest misconception with drifting, is they think it's difficult. It's once you learn how to drift, it is very simple to drift any track, any car, any track. The hardest hurdle is learning how to drift, and learning, why you need to use the handbrake at this point, or why you need to do this, or what you need to do that. And at the end of the day, it's one side of the window is you driving, and the other side of the window is you spinning, and you just need to find the balance between both where you're just sliding. And, that's the difficult part of drifting, is learning it. So once you learn how to drift, drifting is very easy. It's not very difficult. And I don't see why people need to make it more difficult. I don't think.
I'll see if I can really quickly drag it up, because I don't think it's. I think I may have worded it wrong. He did mention the fact that he didn't like the STC mods because they were air quotes easy.
I certainly think that Drift Workshop mods, they're being updated recently. They're always releasing new cars. I think they recently released Mustang or something, which is quite fun to drive. It's not super difficult. It's not super easy. It's a good balance. I don't know if that's how a Mustang drives in real life. I've been told that a Fox Body Mustang handles like crap, but again, is that Fox Body Mustang in real life set up badly? At the end of the day, the setup of a car makes a huge difference in how it reacts and does things.
Did one of my probably actually by far my favorite car that I've downloaded for a set of courses specifically is the Formula Drift Replicas 350Z. I love that car.
Yeah, that's a good car. Yeah,
I adore that car. That one is so much fun to drive. I don't know again how realistic or whatever like that. But have you driven that? What's your opinions on that pack overall? I remember when I asked you about that, you were actually really enjoying the Mustang in that pack at the time.
Yeah. So that pack is actually quite good. That's another pack I kind of use from time to time. What's cool about it is that you very rarely get to drive competition-based cars. Because competition cars are quite fun to drive, and it's kind of cool to see, instead of street style kind of normal-esque kind of Japan style cars, you can get to drive kind of cool high-tier competition cars in the game. Recently there was some guy released the Matt Kaufman's FD 240SX.
I didn't like that one at all.
I didn't like it either.
It self steers or something like that. Do you feel that it's all wheel drive a little bit or something?
Something weird going on there. But when you look at Matt Kaufman's car, the way it drives in real life, I can see why it handles like that in the game, because they tried to replicate it. Yeah. Matt Kaufman's car in real life looks like a bit of a handful anyway, the way they've set it up.
It feels really weird.
It's very the FD replicas pack. There's some good cars in it, and there's some crappy cars in it.
The Nofa's M3 is good as well.
Yeah, I've driven that. When I first drove it, I didn't really like it at first because its steering again was very, 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 should we say, kind of. It was as if it was. I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe certain sensations with steering of cars, but it was as if it was locking on and big lock a lot. Yeah. It was always as if it was trying to glide. To use jargon to describe it, it looked as if it had zero acclimate, which would describe why you were able to do lots of backwards entries in all the STC cars. Yeah. Whereas the likes of the Drifty Z of Tanner Faust, let's say, of that pack, would have acclimate put into it. It feels like that, so that it feels a lot more settled and more neutral.
What's that word you're saying?
So it's acclimate. It's basically the difference between the angle of the lead wheel and the follow wheel when it's on full lock, essentially.
Yeah.
So race cars would have a negative, so especially Formula 1 cars would have a negative, so that when they're turning left, the outside wheel is turning more and then the inside wheel or something like that. And drift cars would be the opposite. They'd have when you're on full lock. So when you're on full lock, the lead wheel, so let's say the wheel if you're going around the right hand corner of the car, the wheel on the left that's on lock would be, let's say, at 60 degrees, whereas the wheel on the inside would be at 50 degrees. And that's what acclimate is the difference between the angle of the two wheels.
Oh no, that angle I thought you meant the equivalent differential in the rear, the speed that they're going. But no, it's like that, but for angle wise.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And the thing is, if you have a zero acclimate, so if both wheels are at 60 degrees, then doing backwards entries is much easier because it's a bit like a forklift in a way that the thing kind of just rotates around. Whereas when you have an acclimate difference, where there's a different angle between the two wheels, the car sometimes tends to try to go one direction because it's at a less of an angle than another wheel, and so it does some weird stuff. And that's it's just science and physics and silly stuff like that. I'm not very good at describing.
Geometry, bruh.
That's pretty much it, man.
So you actually picked. So what I thought you thought I would say was your favorite game was AC, which I knew wasn't the case. I know that AC isn't your favorite one. But I thought R Factor was. I did not expect Live for Speed. What throws me off about Live for Speed is I don't think my wheel works with it. I haven't tried it yet, or since I got the wheel.
It should work because it's basically a G27.
It is, but R Factor, my wheel doesn't work with R Factor at all.
Oh, it doesn't work with R Factor.
No.
Oh, right, okay. Well, you see the thing with like R Factor, a great game. Or what I love about it is that okay. So the differences between the three games, right? Assetto Corsa, you can just drive a car.
Yeah.
You can set it up. You can do lots of different things. You can drive online and stuff, but you can't build a car. Yeah. So you can't replicate, you can't style it, you can't do anything like that.
I beg to differ. I'll send you a picture of my S14 that I made. You do, now, to be fair, you do have to learn how to 3D model a little bit. Not 3D model, but like you need to be able to like go into 3D sim ed and like take off parts of the cars. Stick them on. But I did that and I've got my own like little personal S14 that I'll show you after this. It's amazing.
yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, you could do stuff like that, but I mean...
But I know what you mean, yeah, like, seriously, yeah, I know what you mean. Like, factory,
like,
just swap out body parts.
And a lot of the cars in the game, if I want a 500 horsepower SR20 and there's an RB26 in the car, I can't change the engine unless the modder released the version of the car that had an SR20.
Well, so in theory, now with Assetto Corsa, there's the Assetto Corsa, what do they call it, the car editor, where you can swap, like, you can either swap engines out, or you can... again, these aren't, now your point still stands because this isn't in the base game, so if you're talking about just the base game without touching mods and stuff like that, because there is the car editor where you can either like bump up per horsepower by percentages, which is dead handy if you just want to add an extra few horsepower or whatever, or you can swap out engines completely, like, which I think is cool, and it creates like a new clone of the car, so it doesn't just edit your car, so you can keep your standard version. So say for example like the Titan Mod S14 or something like that, it creates a copy and like gives it a new name, like it's Titan Mod S14 V8 or whatever. Which is cool.
I mean, like, that's kind of cool stuff, but I mean, you can't, speaking, use that car online then.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, like, that's the problem, is that, you can't modify a car and go online. No, you can. You can change the tones, or you can change the engine and have more power, or you can change the physics. I'm pretty sure the version of STC I'm running right now is different to everyone else's. And everyone else's car is like a monster truck because they have different physics. Yeah. And they probably would see my car as exactly the same, and they're probably looking at, why is this guy's car so high? 420 Blazer. But it's just I don't know. It's like that's one issue I have with the game. I can't, if I want to, let's say if I was like watching a video and I see this guy has a 4A GE powered S14 and he's out there drifting with other guys with SR20s, S14, something like that. I can't do that exactly legitimately. Whereas with R Factor, like, I can go into the game. If I want to have different wheels on the front of the wheel, rear, or if I want them not a different color, but if I want them a different shape or whatever, I can just buy a new upgrade that the modder has included in with the mod. Yeah. Or if I wanted to run a different type of coilover setup on the car, I can do that. If I want
the other players, if you play online, the other players don't have to have those. It just works like.
They will see it. They don't. As long as it's the same mod, they will see all the changes I made to my car. As long as I haven't gone off and modded those changes into the car, let's say.
But they'll also have to have that car, though.
Yeah, they'll have to have that mod. So it's just like having to download the same mods as what you would have on Assetto Corsa, let's say. But if I put a spoiler on my car and there was if I ended up, so if I went to,
say for example, me and you went into a drift thing right now. We both had this S13 mod, but mine had like the Rocket Bunny kit and Rocket Bunny wing. Yours had like Origin kit and like a
you would see
wing on standoffs, whatever it's called. Like you because they are the same mods, I'd still have those same parts. Like we'd see
you'd see everything. And if I if I had different wheels on the front and rear, you would see that, and you would have your car the way that you wanted it, and that's what you see when you see those R Factor videos and stuff. Everyone has a different car, pretty much, which is really nice, and it adds as well for the performance upgrades more so that. If I want to run a 64-degree steering angle kit, I can. And if the modder has an option for 50 degrees, I can run that too, where you can still run 64 degrees if you really wanted to. Yeah, and that's the great thing about it, is that you can make changes like that, and you can really replicate someone's car.
And if I'm not mistaken, R Factor is given out in like an it's like passed around as like an executable with like a folder with all these stuff already included, right? Not technically, literally. I think there's like the Spitzy version of it that a lot of people use. There's just
you can buy it online, obviously, but there's obviously a way.
Which is the way you should do it, folks. For anyone watching out there, that technically the Spitzy version is illegal.
It is illegal, yeah. But I mean, again, like just a lot of stuff there that's already included. Now, since then, there's been a lot of new stuff released that are better, but that's very easy to download if you have a fast internet connection. My problem with R Factor, though, kind of answering your question more so, is that it's very indirect. Let's say it's very numb. There's always this deadness in the center, let's say, and you always feel like as if the car is very wishy-washy, kind of
like a dead zone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Can that not be adjusted? Can that not be taken out?
Not really. It's I've tried everything. I mean, that's why I got the new Trustmaster this wheel, because it's a lot more sensitive that way, and even then it's still not better. I mean, the game is kind of old that way, but that's one problem. No, I mean, you could probably blame the mods on that too, because there's been so many new modders over the years have left and stuff. There's no real progression over the time. It's just been the same stuff almost. But in a way, like, it's difficult to mod because you have to create everything from scratch, and because of that, then you're a bit of uncertainty. So that's why I like using LFS, because everyone uses the same car. It's very direct. It feels like as if you're drifting a real car. The problem is that you're not actually driving a real car. It's more of a made up kind of like GTA style thing, where the car you're driving is like based on something real, but you don't really know what it's actually based on. But it looks like, let's say, a Honda Civic, but it's probably actually based on a Nissan Qashqai or whatever, and it's rear-wheel drive, and it's got 200 horsepower, and you're just drifting it, and everyone else has the same car. So
yeah, that's the only other thing that throws me off. Aside from the fact that I'm not sure if my wheel works for it, it didn't when I first tried it. Is that thing of like all the cars being that same like generic new model thing? It's like that's even worse than the Assetto Corsa thing. At least the Assetto Corsa thing, the cars do have style and they are good looking.
Yeah,
and they are real
cool
cars now. Like
and that's my only problem with LFS. But then again, you know what? You
but
play
are the physics that good that they make up for it? Like,
yes, yeah, I would think so. I mean, like it's how a car drives that it replicates good, not how the car actually drives, if that makes sense. Because you're not actually driving a real car. You're not driving an S14 or a GTR or whatever. You're driving some fictional base car. So, I mean, in a way, it's hard to know if the physics are really good because of the fact that they just could make a car that feels really good, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that everyone's in the same car. You can tandem with people, and you're learning how to tandem against people in similar cars. So you're always going to have close tandems, and you're always learning about left footing and handbraking and not doing silly mistakes. And you're learning with a car that has 45 degrees of steering angle, not 60.
Yeah. So LFS, Live for Speed would be your choice if you had to pick one.
If I turn on my steering wheel right now, I'd probably go on LFS. But
is there mods though? Isn't there? Like, it's not like
there is
the thing. So there is mods, but it's nowhere near the levels of R Factor AC. Why is that actually?
No, or Assetto Corsa that is. I mean, you can get tweaked mods, so you can adjust like people that release mods and stuff. Like you're releasing S14, let's say, and the body would actually be bigger than the car that they're replacing it with. So you use a tweak to adjust your wheelbase so that it's longer, let's say, and it matches it. But it still handles like the old car, and
so it's
you can change the weight, you can change the power, you can change the steering lock, but you can't actually change, how much, where the steering arm goes or where the suspension goes or anything like that. It's very, very mostly power, steering lock.
So like you couldn't sit down now, 3D model an S14, do all the physics, do all the geometry and all that, and just plop it in and just have a good go, share it to your friend, and then the two of you go driving that car. That's not possible. It is just replacing the base car.
Yeah, you're just replacing the model of the base car, and you can add more power. You can add steering lock. You can change. Like the weight of it and all that stuff. But other than that, it's basically like for example, it's basically a Mitsubishi Starion. So that's what it looks like, a Mitsubishi Starion. Replacing the Starion with another shell or another body, but it still handles like a Mitsubishi Starion, just with more steering lock, more power, and a little bit longer or whatever. So I mean, you can't even go online with that because you're not allowed to mod stuff online.
See, those are the things that get me. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, like there is modified servers you can join, but other than that.
That's why I think, but also on the other hand, it does have a track builder, which is fairly handy.
Yeah, you can do your own layouts, and they don't have any real circuits either, so you'll all be driving on fictional stuff. So, I mean, you get a lot of people that replicate tracks just from the top of their head, so you'd have
just using
eco circuit, and it's completely wrong, but it's like...
It's like they have a Bisu Me, but it's just flat.
It's just flat, and they put a few ramps on it so you get a jump, but it's still flat for the remainder of it. You know, it's funny, but I mean, look, it's you drive the game for the fact that it's about as close as you can get to what a real car would handle, like, even though the car you are driving is not actually a real car.
That's interesting. Now, I think just for pure like customization alone, I'd have to go for a Assetto Corsa. I'd take the fairly ropey physics for, not fairly ropey, that's probably a bit bad out, but like the not as good physics or whatever for just the variety. I had to stop using the official Assetto Corsa launcher, and I now have to exclusively use Content Manager because I've got so many car mods. My Assetto Corsa just doesn't load anymore. Let me load up Content Manager. I think it's like 660 at this stage now, cars alone.
Wow.
It's a lot. They're not all good, they're not all bad.
The size of that folder of stuff that you have is pretty big, I'd say.
Oh, it's like 100 gigs, I think. So, of course...
That's dedication right there.
Everything that I come across that looks decent, I get. Like, I've got some like crappy like Le Mans prototype here mods here that are not great. I have a Peugeot 206 mod, just cause. Like, that actually, I will say that's quite fun to bash around the Nürburgring. What are we at? 672, and the folder is 180 gigabytes. Wow, I thought it was small. I didn't realize it was that big. And I have 162 tracks. 163. Like,
yeah, I generally.
That's why, like,
there's a lot I haven't generally used in a while. I usually delete it because I still use the standard general sort of Corsa system of dividing up cars or whatever. But
yeah. If there's anybody out there still watching at this stage, which I hope so, because I just realised what I'm going to be titling this and everything. The Assetto Corsa Content Manager, just as I just mentioned there, you can get it for free, but I highly recommend getting it and also donating. It's like you donate, I think, whatever you want, so you can donate like £2 to the guy, and it like unlocks this thing. It's so much better than the official launcher because it's instant. The one thing that I hate about the Assetto Corsa launcher is, especially once you've got a lot of mods, it takes ages to load up, and even off an SSD, like, it takes ages to load. And like, it's just so much easier to navigate. Like, you can literally drag and drop the cars into the drive or into the content. It's got your media all there, like your photos and replays. It has all your stats, it has all your settings and all. Like, you can do everything that you can do in the game plus more. And you can come up with tags and filters, and you can tweak all this, like the information about the cars and all that within the program. It's brilliant. And like, you can create the previews and all that. You can update all the previews so they all match and everything. Because one of the things that bugs me is that every mod user, it's getting better nowadays because mostly everyone uses Content Manager, so they all use they're all starting to get the same previews, but every mod basically has different preview pictures, which boggles my OCD tits to no end. Like it really bothers me when I've got, like, if I'm scrolling through the cars and it's like some are taken outside, some are taken inside, some are mad zoomed out, some are like different tracks and all that. Like, that's something that really like just gets my OCD. Like, so I literally have spent like hours going through every one of these 672 cars. Not everyone, as I said, some of them already have it, but like going through them and like individually each one, like updating the previews so they all match. But like, that's the option, that's like the flexibility, and that's the power of this program. It's really, really good. Highly recommend it. Like, you can star cars and favorite them and all, and you can search by tags for exactly what you're looking for and all. It's brilliant.
I personally don't have Content Manager, but I know that use it, have it, and they say that's way better, but I still haven't gotten to that point of where I needed it, so I still stick with what I have.
So you've so that's that. So you've touched a little bit on your setup. So you have the Trustmaster. What was it, the T500?
Yeah, T500 RS. Got the.
So what's your whole thing like? Well, I've seen pictures of it in the past. Again, flash them up there if you want to send me some pictures of it or whatever like that.
Yeah, I can do. It's nothing crazy. So for Christmas one year, my dad made me set up for my old 270-degree Microsoft wheel, and it's eventually just kind of gotten to the point of where I've kind of outgrown it. So I sit in the seat,
literally,
and my
in
feet,
this case.
yeah, literally, and my feet kind of out past the pedal box area.
Yeah.
So the pedals, so to kind of give you a brief rundown, it's a custom setup, so it's kind of modified every year or whatever to fit new things that I do buy for it. So I have a T500 RS, I have a Trustmaster TH8 RS, which is the one previous to the TH8A. The reason being is that this was originally for the T500, and then they released another wheel after that, so they ended up renaming it. I have Fanatec CSR Elite pedals.
That's the gear shifter, is it?
Sorry, yeah. That's the gear shifter, 7-speed shifter. Then I have my pedals are a Fanatec CSR Elite inverted, so they're like a normal pedal box, let's say you'd see in a car. And they have a load cell brake pedal, so it's really nice, really useful for racing and stuff, which I kind of do quite often. Then
because I was gonna real quick, I keep interrupting you, my bad. Because we were talking about before we started recording, I was asking you because I'd heard that the Trustmaster pedals were supposed to be really good, so I was surprised that you didn't use those and you kept the Fanatec.
I mean, like the Trustmaster pedals are decent. They're really, really good. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, if I didn't have these Fanatec ones, I would use them. I mean, one thing I didn't mention before we started talking, the main reason why I use the Fanatec is that my handbrake plugs straight into it, and because of that, it makes the handbrake much better. The Fanatec pedals that I have on the board, there is another axis slot, and my dad being an electrician, he was able to solder basically the potentiometer from another set of pedals to it, so that I have a full axis handbrake. So it'd be like a normal handbrake you'd see in a rally car or a drift car, let's say. You know, the more you pull it, the more it starts to lock. And so I kind of have that set up here, which is very hard to get without buying, the Fanatec product that costs 150 euros or whatever, and we were to do it for much cheaper and just as good.
I was very annoyed that was on sale over Christmas time for I think it was I want to say either 75 or 90. I think it was 75 by itself, but with the 25 quid adapter, so it was 95 quid. They didn't have it in stock until February, and I was like, so you've had this thing on sale for 2 months, but you didn't have any? What was the purpose of that? I checked it every day over for, I think it was November or December. I checked it every single day to see if they'd gotten it back in stock, and then eventually put it up in in stock due to February. And I was like, class, absolutely useless. I do plan on picking it up though. I don't know if it'll mount it anywhere in my room, or anywhere in my setup, but I really want a handbrake, because what I'm using at the minute is just the right paddle on my wheel, which can be a little frustrating, especially with my setup. I haven't talked about this on the channel yet, but let's just say I can't see the wheel.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that. But I can't see the wheel. Yeah, so it's kind of hard, when the wheel's doing its full 900 opposite lock rotation, to try and grab the right shifter. Right paddle, I should say. Yeah. I've tried setting it up to both paddles, but it does not seem I've tried assigning the left paddle to H on the keyboard or something like that, and then setting it like that, and it has at one stage worked, but it just seems to just randomly not work. Works and doesn't work whenever it wants. So
I think for most people they use the joystick, by a flight joystick or something that seems to be pretty decent for them. And I mean, for my setup, it just made more sense to I just wanted something a little bit more advanced, because there was nothing at the time when I made this that there was nothing really kind of on sale that was an actual handbrake. And then Fanatec came up with their thing a year later, and it was 130 euros or whatever it was for something that mine does just as good, if not better. So, no, I mean, look, it's at the end of the day, I mean, look, you just buy what you can afford and you just use it. I mean, my Trustmaster T500, if I was to start again, I'd be happy out with a G27, the Trustmaster.
What are your PC specs in your monitor or what like that?
So I have
they're surprisingly important when it comes to this kind of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't just play racing games, I play a lot of other stuff too. I mean, I'm a proper nerd. it's
preaching to the choir, man.
Yeah.
I have a YouTube channel.
I've attempted to do some vlogs, so yeah, I have done some YouTube stuff, alright, but look, it's not a bad setup. It's kind of a bit old school at the moment, because it really does need a new upgrade, like a new CPU and a new graphics card. But it's got an AMD FX A350, so it's a wannabe, 8-core CPU or whatever. But yeah, AMD FX A350 with a Hyper 2 and 2 Evo CPU cooler.
My brother.
MSI GTX 970.
My almost brother. I have the Asus 970.
It's got an MSI 990 FX motherboard. So I kind of went for MSI build, and then I got the motherboard and it was blue, and then I got the graphics card and it was red, and I was like,
Damn.
And then just got 16 gigs of RAM, a DDR3, because AMD don't support this particular AMD mother CPU don't support DDR4, which doesn't make any difference anyway. Got 750-watt power supply, an SSD, a couple of hard drives, and a Corsair C70 Vigilance.
Is that the C70? Which one's that?
It's like the ammo case.
Ah, yeah.
So it's got like two handles on the top. It's super heavy.
I was gonna say, you're kind of like being like, oh yeah, it's kind of outdated now. And I was expecting you to have like somebody, I can't remember who I know that has a PC as well, but it's actually out there. Oh no, my buddy Ryan, he used to, before he got an upgrade, like he used to have an actually like proper kind of just barely able to play games on medium at 60, like kind of thing. I was expecting that, like, but like you basically have the same system as me. I've got the 3570K, the 970 as well. But I've only got 8 gigs of RAM, and I have, what was the other thing? I also had the Hyper 212. Like, we basically got almost identical systems. And I'm like, wait, I didn't realize mine is old. When did that happen? I was thinking about maybe getting a 1070 at some stage, but I didn't realize we were now in the old days.
That would probably be my next upgrade. But the only reason why I said it's slightly old is that the CPU I'm running is like 6 years old, and I've had it for 4 years. And when I bought it, it was at least 3 years out in the market. But
I was going to say, my 3570K, I think that was like a year old or two when I bought it in 2013. So
yeah, I think I've had this for a good long time. Like, but like, you see, I recently helped a friend of mine build his computer, and like his was 1070, an i5 6600. Like, I consider that like brand new. And then I look at mine, I'm like, okay, fair enough. My CPU is similar power, benchmark, whatever. But the power side, the GPU is completely different. No, it's still stock. I don't believe in overclock.
Oh man, I'm on 4.4 gigahertz, and I don't know if it makes a massive difference. I just know that like rendering like videos and stuff like that is great.
Yeah, I know.
And it doesn't with the two, especially the reason I said I presume you were, because you have the 212. What was the
reason being was that the AMD's coolers are horrible.
I suppose AMD.
Yeah, and they kind of recommended if you go with the octa-core 8300 series, that they recommended going with the proper, the proper not running an AMD reference cooler. Just go with the, it's an actual standing cooler, water cooling or whatever. I mean, in a year's time, if I still have the same setup and I'm like starting to see that there's a difference in speed, I will overclock it then. But I think I need more fans anyway, because my motherboard is running quite warm. So before I start overclocking, I need to sort that issue. But it's been like that for the last 2 years.
The one thing I'll say about my setup is it's an absolute workhorse. It's on most of the time. And even in this heat now, for those that don't know, it's been like 30 to anywhere from 25 to 30 degrees the last like 4 days or so in Ireland here. Doesn't really, like, no parts get above like 70 degrees, which is pretty impressive. Like, and it's not that loud, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's on most of the time. It's barely breaking 70. Like.
I mean, I'm just on no load whatsoever. My CPU is at 30 degrees Celsius, which is too bad. It's usually at 22, but I think it needs a little bit of a new thermal paste or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, and the CPU, the motherboard, the graphics card, generally it's about like 30 degrees, and then on full load, then it's between 59 degrees, and I think at 60, I think I've made it. No, I think it's like 65 or something. I've made it blue screen itself or whatever, turn itself off. But it generally, anytime it does blue screen is when I'm rendering, let's say, a video, and it reaches like 60 something degrees. But
that's not very hot for it to be.
Yeah, it's not that bad. But
so I was gonna say, I just dragged up a hardware monitor there, and I was like, i5 3578 temperatures. It's hovering around 40 to 47 now. And the max that it's been it was 56, 59 on one core. And I'm like, that's decent, I suppose. Like, considering I'm not redoing anything, I am recording now. I'm recording.
Is that Intel? That's Intel.
Yeah, so. Intel. Yeah, Core i5.
That shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe I'm just a bit particular over. Maybe that's why it's lasted so long, because I haven't overheated that much. But maybe I might increase that and try and overclock it a small bit. Maybe.
I was gonna say, with those temperatures, man, overclocking will be easy.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, because the motherboard now, it's kind of it's like at 59 all the time, which is kind of a bit warm. So it's just lack of airflow. So I might try and fix that, but we'll see.
I see. You actually touched on it when you were talking about the brakes. So the next question, so that's your setup out of the way. You touched on it briefly. So just coming towards the end of it, I just had a random question. So you do like racing as well? Like, you're not just a drifter guy. Like, you're into cars, so you like actually like racing games.
Yeah. No, I like racing. I compete in an amateur league. Amateur league. I mean, okay, you can consider that I'm not really an amateur, but it's more fun than an actual league. And I mean, I compete in there. There's a guy I know that kind of helps runs it. I know him quite well in IRL, and
pushes his glasses off nose.
Yep, it's kind of a weird terminology.
IRL, buddy.
Yeah, I know him quite well actually, and he runs that and just do it for a bit of fun. I personally think if I didn't get into drifting, I'd be doing rallycross or I'd be doing some sort of racing or something like that instead of drifting. Let's say, I mean, I quite enjoy racing. It's something that I'd like to get into as well. GT racing, especially GT3 or something like that. Maybe Le Mans or two.
I've been really. I watched a lot of the Le Mans over the weekend, and like I spent a lot of hours in the last couple of days just in like the LMP cars in the south course, just blasting on Nürburgring. It's so
I mean, like I'm don't
terrible.
Watch.
I'm a really slow driver.
Well, like I don't really watch a lot of it. Like, I mean, I wouldn't sit down now and watch 3-4 hours of it. I wouldn't sit down. I
didn't do that either.
But I would. You see, the thing is, I don't go to track days and stuff and sit there and watch cars drive around. I have no interest in that. I like driving. That's what I enjoy, and I enjoy the fact that racing against other people. I know there's always this thing about people like, oh, drifting's all about fun and stuff. Drifting for me, fun for me is beating people. Like, that's what I enjoy. Like beating people, being good, not being like being good at whatever, but just being there and racing against people, enjoying winning. Essentially, that's what I enjoy. And I think regardless of sport I would be doing it competitively because I would enjoy doing it competitively because I'd be a very competitive person that way. I don't like school that way because I'm always crap at school, so that's why I don't enjoy school that much because I'm not very good at it, so therefore I'm not competitive at it. You know, but let's say if I was good at school, I would be very competitive at that as well.
Yeah, no, that's just like as I was coming to questions, like that just popped into my head because I was like, all these things were about drifting, but like just out of curiosity, we're into cars. Going back, excuse me, to a thing that was very cool. Couple of things about the car, like, so you were talking about being a nerd and stuff like that, and like your interest in game and stuff like that. I'm the exact same way. I have no shame in admitting that I'm a nerd. I like collect trading cards. I like make YouTube videos on the internet. I make music. I'm like just a massive geek basically. But you actually got a shout out from the IDC, like in the the commentators. During the event, you like they specifically kept on referencing the fact that you came from like game and stuff like that. He gave you a shout out for saying that you either whether you created them, I know you created a few of them, but like you either created or you also like you do the ideal line kind of thing in games.
Yes,
and like that's a service that you do for the thing. Does that bother you? The whole kind of like, oh, now we have Alan Hynes at the line. He's a big gaming guy, and he's coming. Like, is that a thing that's not even if it doesn't bother you, but like, what do you think? Is that something that you're proud of even?
Well, first of all, you mentioned about collecting gamer trading cards stuff. I go to gaming festivals. Okay, so that's where that's how nerdy I am. But it doesn't bother me. It bothers me in the point in that the way they showcase it is that he's done 40 laps already, kind of a thing. You know, that's what kind of bothers me.
Yeah.
In a way, it should be.
It should be easy for him. He just spent all last night practicing, and
it's a bit like the same way they kind of mentioned that. Oh, the only reason why he's winning is that he's got 700 horsepower. You know, in a way, the 700 horsepower thing does make a difference. The gaming, as I said, it's not really. I haven't really said this already, but I mean, it makes a difference in that I know that my car will work on it. The good thing about R-Factor is I can put in my gear ratios, I can put in everything drivetrain related to my car. So the same engine, relatively the same power and same gearing. And then I can go to the track and check to make sure it works. And then I can say, sweet, it works. I don't have to do anything before the event, that side of things. Now, I can't take it as fact, but I know that basically my car, in theory, should work. Now, for those that don't know, I make those track layouts for the event so that, like, I recently just finished the BDC one there just before we started this, so that, you know, the drivers can see what the track looks like, the spectators can see what the track looks like, they can see what they have to look out for. It's good for the organisers too, because they can plan out scheduling, you know, how long it's going to take one lap to do, how long it's going to take to do a lap.
Yeah. And is that like a thing of like they'll say, okay, we're in like say obviously Mondello, for example. Like we're in Mondello now, we're thinking about this new layout, which you're touching on later on. we're thinking about a new layout. Could you knock this together for
yeah.
us? And let's just test it out and let's see if it works. If it works in the game, we'll show it to the drivers or like that, and we'll see if they'd be into it.
So,
is that kind of
my dad does all the track layouts. Okay, so it's great. So like he's sitting right beside me, I can see him working on it, and then he sends it to me actually over Facebook, so the quality goes to crap. But anyway, he sends it to me, and then I take it into my 3D modeling program called Bob's Track Builder. You might have heard it. It's okay. I mean, look, it does the job. I'm used to it at this stage, so I know how to work it. And then I go on my Google Map and I go to the area and I just do my mapping out of what I need and take my screenshot and then bring it into the image. And essentially, you know, if it's street style circuit, like, you know, let's say Dunleary, that is, I set a track to a certain weight and then I just put my track on top of it. I just put my dad's drawing on top of it. And then I just trace it and put the white lines and stuff on it and then just go and test it and see if it works. And, you know, for example, the last day of the BDC event that we're doing just coming up this weekend in Birmingham, you know, they've never been here before. And, you know, the layout is quite weird. You know, it's a very weird, narrow layout. So, you know, we had to try different things. And he sent me the layout and I tried it and I was like, it doesn't really work. I says, you know, because, you know, you first of all don't have enough speed to do the first corner, and so so he went off, and my dad, should I say, went off and he redesigned it again, and I said, yeah, that's much better. You can get much more of an angle, and the transition into this particular area is not as tight or as fast or whatever. It's much better, and you just work on it that way, and so it's really good for, let's say, the likes of my dad who designs the circus. He can go off and decide he wants to try something new, and instead of traveling 2 hours and getting a driver to bring their car who might risk losing tires or whatever to test it, and, you know, whatever, he can just bring it to me and I can have it in the game in less than 30 minutes and give it a quick test, and then see if it works. Now, I mean, that quick 30-minute test is not a very good version of the circuit, but it'll be enough to be able to see if it works or not. And that's how it works. Obviously, with the IC events, it gives me a huge advantage because I can, next Mondello layout now, I'll have that done.
You're practicing. You're in theory practicing them before even other drivers even know what it's going to be.
You know, so I could have 30 or 40, 50, 100 laps on it before anyone else does. And in a way, that is an advantage because my memory muscle of where I need to initiate and everything is the same. But really, I don't think it gives me that much of an advantage because at the end of the day, I feel that I am a good enough driver to be able to go to the track and just be able to kind of nail it first lap kind of a thing. I don't need the extra 40 minutes of 40 laps. It's kind of a weird thing because in a way it does help because it kind of refreshes, okay, this is where I need to initiate and I need to leave this point earlier to get to here. But it's a matter of, you have enough practice on the day now to be able to kind of get that. But then again, I've never gone to an IDC event without any track practice, if that makes sense, game. So I don't really know if it really benefits me or not because I've never noticed it. So I don't know. It depends, if I go to another competition that I've never been to before or another area that I've never been to before and my dad isn't judging. So let's say I'm competing somewhere in Russia or someplace, and I've never been there before and I can't see any other tracks that I've done and just go there and see how it works there. But to that point in time, I don't really see it giving me any advantage from my point of view anyway.
No, that's good. It's just as I was coming to the end of writing these questions, it was another thing. I think I was actually watching your thing at the time, and I just heard him say that. And I was like, I'll throw that in. I think that's basically everything. There was just two last things. Is there anything that you thought I would ask about, or is there anything that I'm missing that I just it blanked out on? Like, is there anything from back in the old days or that you think would be interesting to talk about? I can't think of anything
off the top. No,
off the top of your head.
No.
Right. Well, that brings to the end nearly about what is it now? About 2.5 hours, I think. About 2 hours at least. Is there anything that you'd like to plug? Yep. So I know you've got a Facebook page. Do you have a YouTube? You did that.
I've been trying that
vlog thing on Facebook. If you want to talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, so you can check out my YouTube channel, just Alan Hynes, ALN and you can check out my Facebook page, Alan Hynes Drift, again, ALANHYNES, just Drift, and you can also follow me on Instagram as well, Alan.Hynes37. I also do these vlog stuff as well, which it's called Road to Pro. I haven't really done much on them, I've done 3 so far, and I have another 2.
They've been really good. They've been really high quality, I have to say.
Oh, really? I don't know. I've just been recording off my phone, you know. But you have to start somewhere, I suppose. Yeah. Look, I should really.
It's been good. Like the editing and the pacing and stuff like that has been really good.
Cool.
Like it doesn't lull around like that. Like you show good, interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And like the.
Okay, cool. That's kind of awesome. Like it's kind of hard to get feedback from certain people because some people find it a bit too long to watch, you know, to fall asleep through it, and so they don't really give you good feedback. But I didn't really record much at the last 2 Drift events that I did, so I'm going to do more of a review kind of overview type video. But I haven't actually done that yet. Just no reason, just haven't done it yet. So eventually get that done and get it up, and so people will stop asking me about it. But yep, that's that. But other than that, I do the odd time on my Facebook page. I do kind of a quick little drift live stream or whatever. But you know, gaming. You know,
I always try to pop into those if I see them, just even if it's just for a bit, just to watch.
Yeah, they're kind of fun, but they kind of can be boring too.
I think that might be it. Yeah. Yeah, basically, thanks. Episode 1. This is the first of at least, I'm hoping, 3. And then hopefully I can maybe talk to Alan, see if he knows anybody that's interested or everything like that, see if we can go from there.
Yeah, I know some people that would be in.
That's really cool. Alright, man, appreciate you coming on.
No problem, thank you.
So I'll wrap it up. That's it, basically. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.